And don't let that take away from what the Utah Mammoth did. One of the beauties of a full schedule in any sport is that you're going to get a mix of opponents. And one of the signs of a quality team is that you make bad teams look bad, that you don't let bad teams hang around. And Nick Schmaltz gifted all of you with the 25% off coupon for any Utah Mammoth merchandise as long as it's headwear because of the hat trick that Nick Schmaltz scored last night. 25% off, and I love that. I love a promotion that is tied to the success of a team on the field. By the way, I know I'm bouncing around a little bit here, but have you seen the Fanatics, like the brand Fanatics, the same brand that manufactures the official NHL sweaters? Have you seen their response to all of the criticism they're getting because of the available Super Bowl merchandise, or I should say the lack of availability on quality Super Bowl merchandise? I know Utah fans can sympathize with this because the second Rose Bowl game in particular, there were a lot of complaints about the merch available, how nothing really did justice to the occasion, nothing really did justice to the game itself. The best piece of merchandise that they could have put out there for that was if they just would have sold the official helmet decals, the interlocking U's with the rose intertwined, that would have been the top seller. They kept the exclusives on the actual apparel pretty carefully. Made you jealous of the players and coaches that got to see, the full sewn-on patch type stuff with that. But Fanatics had to issue an apology for their lack of effort on the Super Bowl gear. The game is being played on Sunday. What are we doing? The NFL is usually undefeated in this stuff. The NFL is usually so good at making sure their merchandise, their marketable souvenirs, whatever, are exactly that, marketable and reasonable. Not this time.
Sounds like a problem for the unfortunate people who are Seahawks and Patriots fans.
Yes.
Sorry about that, guys.
Sorry about your bad luck that your team's in the Super. No, can't sell it.
Shoot,
can't really sell it.
Yeah, I mean, people like you and I, we have to find a way somehow. When this is the Super Bowl matchup, to throw some shade at these really good teams who we just don't like. I feel like we're opposites in this way, OC. We both hate. Well, hate's the strong word for how I feel about the Seahawks. But we both strongly dislike both these teams.
Yes.
But I hate the Patriots like their arrival, and you hate the Seahawks like their arrival.
Yeah.
And you strongly dislike the Patriots because they're the Patriots, and I strongly dislike the Seahawks because they're the Seahawks. It's like we are the same, but we have it for the opposite motivations.
Yes. It's the distaste for the franchises is similar, but also opposite in a weird way.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's still the Super Bowl. It's still going to be the biggest sporting event of the year in the United States of America.
Should be a great game.
Although this year maybe not. This year we might actually, because the World Cup cycles on this year and it is a North American World Cup, maybe this won't be the biggest television viewing event.
Unfortunately for NBC, they don't also have the rights to that event. Like NBC has everything except for the World Cup this year. I'm sure they're crying somewhere in a corner about that. The home of the Olympics and the Super Bowl at the same.
At the end of the day, there's a lot of intrigue in the game, even if I'm not intrigued by the game. And we'll get into some of those storylines more tomorrow. That's my last show of the week before I take off to call PFL fights in Dubai. Is Bryson Jordan? They're gonna.
So we have Porter Larson tomorrow. He and Gordy Chase is gonna be in studio. It's trade deadline day.
Yeah.
And it's also a Thursday, so we're getting him an hour on trade deadline day, like we do every year, in studio. So he and Porter will have all the updates there. By the way, James Harden might be on the move again, which is wild to think about. So we'll have the updates there. If Giannis gets moved, anybody on the Jazz gets moved, of course, we'll keep you updated there with Gordy and Porter. I believe Porter is going to have Cade Madsen back on the show because day one of the PBR at the Delta Center is Friday.
That's right. That's Friday.
And Porter is a rodeo aficionado and wants to have a chance to promote that one more time with Cade. Of course, I think he probably knows Cade personally because Porter just knows everyone in rodeo who does rodeo in Utah.
Our rodeo correspondent Porter Larson will be giving us the insight on the PBR. I like
it. And then we're efforting one more guest in the 1 o'clock hour. But that's going on Thursday. Friday will be Bryson Bianucci, of course. Morning show on the Fan. They'll be filling in. You guys know them by now. They filled in quite a bit for Sean over the fall. They'll be sitting in. Lee Sterling's last. He's coming back to do the Super Bowl betting segment with Bryce.
Judy.
And Bill Riley, of course.
So you have a lot to look forward to for Thursday and Friday. Super Bowl discussion will be a big part of that. Today, we've got Gordy Chiesa, we've got JT Jonathan Tavernari to talk a little college hoop, and then Jeff Schwartz is going to join us in his normal time at around 1 o'clock to talk about the Super Bowl as well. With the approaching NBA trade deadline, I put a poll question out, and I'm always curious to see what people think, and already people are weighing in somewhat. The question of what you want to see the Utah Jazz do, and then the secondary question is, how long should a rebuild take? How long do we say, oh, well, they're rebuilding right now? How long do we say they're in the middle of a rebuild, so that's why this is okay? How long do we say it's all right if it takes another year because this is a rebuilding team? The grace period, the extended level of patience that is now expected from fans, and there's an understanding, there's a tacit agreement between fans and franchises now that, like, hey, we're gonna go in this cyclical push-pull, all right? We're really, really, really going to pour into our roster, into our facilities, into our whatever, while we have a certain player, while we have a certain window. And then, inevitably, there's going to be some level of downturn, or we're going to fire a coach, fire a GM, fire everybody, and we're going to clean house, and we're going to say, all right, now this is a rebuild, so be patient with us. There are some franchises that don't have that luxury. Major markets, the Dodgers in baseball now, right, where you're not really accepting of a rebuild. But we got our first NHL franchise, and at the opening introductory presser, the owner, and more importantly, the hockey people, the GM, the coach, were like, hey guys, this is a rebuild. It's going to take some time. By all means, have fun with this, but give it some time. And the reason I wanted to have this conversation today is because we had Tom Callahan on yesterday. And I started the conversation with kind of like a qualifying statement, something to the effect of, I know that you're still kind of like at the tail end of a rebuild. And he was adamant in saying, no, it's not a rebuild anymore. You're in year 5. Let's stop with that. This is not a rebuild. It is playoffs or bust for this Utah Mammoth team. So in Tom's mind, the rebuild is over. The rebuild is done. And he also said it's year 5, which I think means that his answer to the poll question would be something to the effect of, well, yeah, you get 5 years to rebuild. How long can you wait on a rebuild in pro sports before your team needs to start competing for deep playoff runs? The answers I put out there, less than 5 years, 5 to 6 years, 7 to 8 years, or 8+ years. Cole Bagley, KSL Utah Mammoth insider, has said, look, it took the Tampa Bay Lightning like 8 years. It takes teams 8 to 12 years in the NHL sometimes to complete the process of a rebuild. Personnel is the most important thing here. And if we're talking about the Utah Jazz, because it's the NBA trade deadline that's approaching, the Ainge family, the Smith family, Will Hardy and company, they need to walk up to Keontae George specifically every single day and extend a handshake and be like, hey, you need anything? You want us to send a personal chef over to the house? Do you need a new car? I know we're already paying you, but Keontae George has accelerated the rebuild process for the Utah Jazz in a way that makes this season a lot more palatable and a lot more tolerable for Utah Jazz fans. Because last year was not that. Last year was not palatable. Last year was really, really gross from a fan perspective, especially because it didn't translate to a top pick in the lottery. And when I say it didn't translate to the top pick in the lottery. You wanted Cooper Flagg. You were never going to get Cooper Flagg. You didn't get Cooper Flagg. I'm a conspiracy theorist. I buy into the fact that that was a compensatory thing for the Dallas Mavericks in trading Luka, whatever. You don't have to believe that portion of it. That's fine. You didn't get the top pick. You got a really nice player in Ace Bailey. So Ace Bailey and Keontae George both deserve, I think, a lot of thanks from the front office in making this season a lot more palatable for Utah Jazz fans, because right now you look at the question I put out there, what do you want to see them do before the trade deadline? 27% of people say don't do anything, do nothing. And the reason they say that is because they're believing, at least that 27% are believing, like, you're not going to get anything productive done before this trade deadline, and I will ride with what you've got for now. And I'm willing to do that right now if I'm a Jazz fan, because of Keontae George's emergence, because of Ace Bailey's promise that he continues to show, because Lauri Markkanen is an awesome player, awesome enough that you have to keep him out of the lineup or you're going to win too many games. You have a core now. Walker Kessler's been injured all year. That, weirdly, oddly, unfortunately for the Utah Jazz, that it had to happen that way. But that might be a blessing in disguise for this Jazz team, because it's easier to pull the gentleman's tank when you don't have another young player who I believe does factor into that core. So how many players do you need to make up a core of a competitive, rebuilt, notice how I said rebuilt and not rebuilding, a competitive, rebuilt NBA franchise? How many players do you need to know, like, that guy's a staple on this team? Is it 5? Is it you need your 5 starters? Is it 7 because you got to have a couple reliable guys on the bench? Is it not even the full 5 because really what you need is a core of 3, and then you can fill in the blanks around those individuals like so many teams in the NBA have? That's another poll question I could put out. But for the Utah Jazz, I think, in Twitter arguments notwithstanding, I think you can take a look at Lauri, Keontae, Ace Bailey, and for me, Walker Kessler is absolutely a big part of this. He doesn't have to be for you. And say that's a core that I feel okay about building around, as long as we can add more pieces to it. And right now, the Utah Jazz have a lot of draft capital. I don't know how long the patience lasts, though, because Ace Bailey, you look at him now and you see these bright flashes, and even Keontae George, who's in his first year of dominant NBA basketball, and let's say he continues this. Do we think that means next year those two guys are ready to be piece number 2 and piece number 3 on a playoff team? In a vacuum, I could look at that squad and say, yeah, that's a fun group. They're capable of putting up some awesome numbers, especially Keontae. Look at this guy. But then you see what the rest of the West has, and you have to remember, like, where the San Antonio Spurs are at, and what the Lakers will continue to be, and what OKC is, and they're your same age or younger, and you're just like, wait a second. So how long are you supposed to accept the rebuilding process as a professional sports fan? And by the way, I'm looking at this from an NBA lens right now, but I think the timelines are varied depending on your sport. And most of us probably aren't hardcore enough with the NHL to give you real examples of how long it should take. But I will say this: if Bear Tourney and Bill Armstrong and a lot of the experts like Tom Callahan, who joined us, has said, no, man, year 5 and you're ready to go, my initial response to that is like, okay, does it only take 5 years? And then I look at the young players on this Jazz team, the guys that are heading into their second contract or their big extensions, that are still in their early 20s, and I'm saying, well, Yeah, to me, Clayton Keller he's on the Olympic team. He's not a young, promising piece that someday is going to be good. He's there now. He's a 90-point guy.
Well, he's coming up close to 10 years in the league too, right?
That's the other thing. A lot of these
he's
guys
not a young guy anymore.
A lot of these guys are 29 years old, which in the NHL is not. I mean, that's an old sports age, right?
And I'm learning that NHL, depending on the position, you can really hit your prime early 30s, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe,
or you could hit your prime mid 20s.
Yeah, depending on the kind of talent you are and the situation you're in, the development you get, of course. But there's a lot of guys that they weren't top of the league till year 8, 9, 10 in the league, right? So, and we're still learning that in this market. So it's possible that, hey, Clayton Keller is still a young piece by NHL standards, but the guy's like the Mammoth being in year 5 of this Mammoth/Arizona Coyotes rebuild. Yeah, I agree with Tom Callahan. If it's a playoffs or bust year, the rebuild's over. You're now trying to contend, right? You're in a point where you feel like you can contend this year, next year, the year after, whatever. But when you're in the Jazz's position and you're not even close to playoff position, you don't want to be close to playoff position yet. If you're not there by year 5, it's probably going on a little too long. Hopefully, they're able to keep their first round pick this year, and starting next year, they can be close to where the Mammoth were last season, where it's like not quite playoffs or bust, but we're gonna be factoring into the playoff race in some way, and the rebuild might be over.
And this is where, when we're talking about a rebuild and we're talking about a timeline, the front office has to be able to anticipate development and also adding veteran presence to a developing team. And so Clayton Keller is now a veteran in the league, right? He's only 27 years old as a human, but he's a dyed-in-the-wool veteran of NHL hockey. He is an all-star caliber player. He's an Olympian. He's a guy that, like, you don't see somebody like that and say, in a few years, he's really going to be something in the NHL. He's something in the NHL right now. Gunther is becoming that. Cooley, before the injury, was emerging into that, although both of those guys on the younger side. J.J. Peterka. You're looking at this Mammoth roster made up of guys that you're like, this is not a rebuilding roster. You add Stenlund, you add Sergachev, you add Krause, you add what Schmaltz is doing right now, and you say, okay, this is not a rebuilding roster. This is a rebuilt roster. This is a roster that has that sprinkling of young talent, certainly, but there's now, of the core, has matured to a level where they need to be able to compete right now. And if it's 5 years in the NHL, because that's our experience, so be it. I'll go with the 5-year timeline for the NHL. Honestly, it feels short, because we're talking about a team that has a bunch of its most important players in their early 20s. I'm like, Keller is your captain at 27. He's your veteran and obviously Krause and Sergachev and some of these guys are older. But, like, the core of your team is 27 years old. And you don't have as many of these, like, old, grizzled veteran types that he could even bounce his ideas off of and help him build this culture. So you're a young rebuilt team, but you're still – I'm accepting of the idea, because we all will be sorely disappointed if this Mammoth team does not make the playoffs, that 5 years – is the timeline I'll go with until I have reason to adjust. In the NBA, it feels so much more dependent on individuals, on one single player. Whether or not you're rebuilding, you are rebuilt, you're somewhere in between those two things, whether you're a contender, it's so dependent on stars. And in the NHL, obviously having star talent is amazing, but it is secondary to football and being the ultimate team game. You have to, like, if your top line and your second line are spectacular, but you've got a crap goalie and your third and fourth line can't hold their water, you're not going to do anything as a team. Depth is the name of the game, right? In football, that's the case. In this NBA, we could say, well, we got A.J. DeBonson now, so the rebuild is over. He's a bad example. I wouldn't say that if it were A.J. DeBonson. If the Utah Jazz got a Victor Wembanyama player, you'd say, oh, rebuild's over. Now's the time. Now you got to make the playoffs. You have that dude, maybe you let him get into year 2.
Yeah, Spurs he's in year 3 with the Spurs. They have yet to make the playoffs. So,
and they're gonna this year.
They're going to. He's had some injuries that have made that the case. They probably would have been a playoff team, or at least a play-in team last year if he didn't have that playoff. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Basketball, you get one superstar, and all of a sudden you are probably to the point where we were talking about the Mammoth/Utah Hockey Club last year, where it's like, they could make the playoffs. That'd be so exciting. And then year 2, it's like, if you don't make the playoffs, we're going to be disappointed. That's probably where it is NBA. You get that one superstar player, you're there. You probably still can get away with 2 or 3 years before you're actually in the playoffs and there to stay, right?
Like in the playoffs, and we expect you to win a series, and like
maybe get to the conference finals. Yeah.
And I try to be as realistic as possible when I said, how long could you wait out a rebuild before your team starts competing for deep playoff runs? Because when we're talking about living here in the state of Utah, I mean, the Jazz have never won a championship. And we knew back in the day, we knew that they were going to compete for a championship, but we couldn't speak with certainty about whether or not they were ever going to win one, and they didn't, right? So I'm not even asking you how long will you wait out a rebuild with this Jazz team until you want them to compete for a championship. I'm just talking about don't get swept out of the playoffs, maybe win a playoff series. Like, give us some meat on the bone as sports fans, because the rebuild thing, I totally understand. It's a natural process in professional sports, but there are some teams that get caught in this perpetual loop, and they're the Jets, they're the Browns, they're the Oakland Athletics, they're unfortunately my Minnesota Twins as of late mostly, right? Like, you get stuck in this perpetual loop of being like a once great franchise or a never great franchise, and you don't compete anymore. And they just keep saying rebuilding, and then you find that piece that's like, ooh, maybe this is something we could build around. And then those types of franchises ship that person off for a bunch of picks and hit the reset button voluntarily over and over again. That's why I was so adamantly against trading Lauri Markkanen last year, and why I'm still off the Lauri Markkanen trade train. By the way, 17% of people say they want to move Lauri for a big haul of picks, because you could get something significant back for a Lauri Markkanen type player, but because Giannis is in the market right now, that devalues what Lauri could be, I think, in the market. In any case, I'm adamantly against moving Lauri Markkanen, because if you do that, you're voluntarily extending the rebuild. You're telling your fan base, give us another 2 or 3 years of your patience, because we decided to move off of the only all-star caliber player we've got. Because a healthy Lauri Markkanen is an all-star.
Potentially all-NBA, certainly all-star. Yeah. The only way that the Angels might still get the kind of haul that they would want from trading their best player by trading Lauri Markkanen is if no one's able to get a deal done with Giannis, and now James Harden has entered the chat as a guy who is seeking a trade, right?
And I guess maybe if a team that really wants Giannis doesn't get Giannis,
like the Warriors, for example, who tried really hard to get Lauri, they could settle for Lauri Markkanen,
sure,
and probably offer, the Angels would hope that they would offer more than Jonathan Kuminga in return, and couple of picks like they did a couple summers ago in order to move away from Lowry. But I'm with you. Unless you get like a Rudy Gobert or a Donovan, a similar haul you got for Rudy Gobert,
Yeah.
I'm keeping Lowry because next year you're going to try to win again, presumably.
And we got a tweet about that. There's, not a lot of people. The bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, all right? So draft capital is wonderful. It's a luxury if you can get it, if you have a history of drafting incredibly well and developing incredibly well. Do we trust that this Utah Jazz franchise under the current leadership has that reputation? Part of the reason that the New England Patriots back in the day were able to unload big-time veterans, let somebody else pay them all their money, and use the draft capital is because, say what you want about Bill Belichick and his cheating and the fact that it's embarrassing what's going on with him in North Carolina and with the girlfriend and all that stuff, the guy was an absolute wizard when it came to identifying talent that maybe nobody else in the NFL was paying attention to, utilizing guys, usually like random lacrosse players or quarterbacks or small little white guys that nobody else really gave any credit to, and he had the luxury of Tom Brady being his quarterback who erased pretty much every significant error you could make as a coach, right? So part of the reason that model doesn't work for everybody is because you don't draft as well as they do, or you don't develop as well as they do. You can't continually just trade away good things, established things, for the potential of a great future. If you're really good at identifying and developing potential, let's gamble that way. But the Jazz don't have a spectacular track record of that as a franchise. I think the Angels probably feel like, well, we know what we're doing on that front. And maybe a lot of Jazz fans feel that as well. And Ace Bailey is a great story this year. I did not like the way that story started, but I like the way it's going right now. And that's a credit to Ace and to everyone in that building. So if you use him as the example, maybe you do believe, yeah, by all means, Lowry or whatever for a bunch of draft capital. Or like maybe you're more like you're a little bit more risk averse. You're less likely to extend yourself that far, and you've gone with what 41%, 42% of the respondents on the poll have so far at Real OC Sports, by the way. Trade the bench vets for picks. George Niang, Kevin Love, whoever. Like somebody might need them. You're not going to get a big haul like you would for Lowry, but you're going to get a little something, and that's a more conservative approach. This is all before a trade deadline that comes on Thursday, by the way. So 877-353-0700. Tell me what you think the Jazz should do.
You know what? You want my early prediction of what will happen with the Jazz?
Yeah.
Nobody's getting traded. They're going to try, but I don't think that they're going to get the price that they want for Lowry. I think they're going to get some calls about Walker Kessler despite him being injured because him being a restricted free agent, he's still under team control, and he's spectacular young talent at his position. So I think they're going to get some calls for those guys. I don't think they're going to get the offers they want to move off of them. And then they're going to try to offload Nurkic for that kind of package. They're going to try to offload Kevin Love for that kind of package. I think they're going to get some interest, but my prediction is nothing happens. We have the exact same team going into the second half of the season. And Austin ain't just going to be made to look like a liar because they're going to have to manipulate minutes in order to keep and lineups in order to keep their pick.
I was told we wouldn't see that this year. On the text line, in my opinion, a rebuild shouldn't last more than 5 years to at least be competitive. The pieces should at least be in place by year 3. Year 4, you should be making dramatic progress. And year 5, you should be comfortably in the playoffs. If that's not the case, then changes might need to happen. And I think what you probably are alluding to there is changes that are not player personnel changes. Players can only do what they can do, right? And everyone's trying as hard as they can. Now you're talking about roster construction, leadership type changes. Also the follow-up, I truly hate the trade Lowry idea. We know that Lowry is awesome. Getting 3 first-round picks that are at the end of the first round is not going to help. When competing, you have to have a starting point, and Lowry is that. So if Lowry is your starting point, I agree with a lot of what you said. If Lowry's your starting point, and then he is the player that, okay, are we going to build around him? Again, going back to my original point, everyone in that building, Lowry included, should be coming up to Keontae George and saying, congratulations on your focus and your work ethic translating to what you are as a player this year, because you accelerated the timeline for this entire franchise, and maybe the only people who don't like it are the folks that are now accountable to winning next year. Because you have to. And I think Will Hardy's probably so excited about it because there's a certain level of fatigue with being asked to coach through a rebuild as well, even when you're a bright young guy that people think can do some good things. All right, we're way over time here, but I know that our next guest, Gordy Chiesa, is going to have some thoughts on all of this. The Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Well, welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome in Gordy Chiesa, our resident NBA guru. Gordy, how are you, sir?
Sean, I am doing fine.
All right, so we're talking about the approaching trade deadline, and we had a hockey guest on yesterday, Tom Callahan, who I mentioned something about the Mammoth being at the tail end of a rebuild, and he pushed back and said, no, the rebuild is over. It's playoffs or bust now. At year 5, you can't call it a rebuild anymore, and it had me thinking really all night after the show was over and even this morning, and I was like, okay, so how long should we allow for rebuilds to take place? And I think it's different sport by sport. And in the NBA, your rebuild could be shorter because you get one great talent and then you're able to accelerate that process. But we know that the Jazz have been kind of in this phase for a while now. As a rule of thumb, Gordy, do you have a set number of years where, like, hey, if you're going to be rebuilding, you can only be rebuilding for this long?
Yes, that rule will be roughly 3 to 5 years.
All right.
So the Jazz right now is in their 4th season. The last time the Jazz made the playoffs was 2022. So that was going to be probably 4. I'm assuming right now that the Jazz are not a playoff team, so it'll be 4 years now. So next year is a critical year. And the Jazz standing right now, with their record of being 15 and 30, which equals to 45 games, it seems to me that they're planning ahead for next year.
Does Keontae's emergence this year serve as something that changes that timeline, where he emerged so successfully, now you can shave a year off of what you in the front office expected? Or are we looking at a guy who just is maybe a pleasant surprise that doesn't change your overall plan?
He's not a surprise because he's really a talented scorer. But for the Jazz to win, him and his other allies on his team, they have to defend also. So the Jazz, just situationally, they have to really just get better overall. But he's a talent, and so is Ace Bailey, and so is Larry Marketing, and so is Walker Kessler defensively. He hasn't played. He only played the first 5 games this year, and so a lot of times it's out of sight, out of mind. But the Jazz need those 4 guys to keep accelerating offensively, but also defensively. And that's when you'll know more about the Jazz. So, for example, when the Spurs are rebuilt and also the Thunder, both those teams, though, play good defense with an addition of all their scorers. So the Jazz have to address that as far as their core guys and the guys in the future draft. And the 2026 draft is going to be it's really 1 through 10. You can make a discussion. All 10 guys will be value contributors, and the top of the draft is going to be guys that could be franchise difference makers.
We were talking, because you just mentioned the top of that draft, we were talking a lot about A.J. Debonsa. I don't know if you got a chance to watch BYU versus Kansas, but I think because of what we know about him, how highly compensated he is, the ranking he had coming out of high school as far as recruiting and things like that, I know it makes me hypercritical in the way that I watch him play. And now, I'm starting to ask the question. I think he's going to be a great NBA player. I think he's going to figure it out. But I'm starting to ask the question about how ready he is for elite talent and elite competition right now, because the best teams that we've seen BYU play against, he has not necessarily showed his greatness. Against lesser competition, he puts up 40 points and 10 rebounds and looks like the dominant player we all expected him to be. I don't know if we're seeing that when he's playing against ranked teams and he's playing against teams that have other NBA lottery picks on them. Is that a fair assessment? Is that how NBA teams look at guys like that when they're going into games like that?
Well, most NBA teams, and I do it also, is that visualize him in an NBA game where there's other talented players in the court where they can't really just focus totally on him. So, say Kansas and Houston on Saturday night, which is another big game for BYU. They play Houston Cougars, who is a serious defensive team. They're going to be absolutely more physical, box and one, trick defenses, trap defenses versus him to try to get him off stride. So that's what he's dealing with right now. Next year in the NBA and after that, they're going to try to stop him like all talented scorers, but it won't be the same as far as if I don't score right now, it hurts my team dramatically. So he's not ready to be a franchise player because he's only 19 years old, but absolutely he's talented enough to really be a tremendous player with just more strength and with more allies on the floor as far as the NBA context. So again, you have to future cast out how you view him. He'll be a high draft pick, and he'll be a tremendous NBA player. Right now in college basketball, he's getting different looks against him. They're all trying to solely so it's almost like trying to score the ball and make plays where it's Sean. It's almost like a 5 against 3. Even though the Cougars have other talented players on the court, they're all focusing on him. That's why Richie Saunders is getting the open looks, because they're all trying to guard him, Bansky.
Gordon Chiesa brought to you by our friends over at Aladdin Industries, your Utah Velux dealer. All right, so this trade deadline approaches, and every time we talk, it's, hey, is something going to happen with Giannis? Where's Giannis going to end up? Giannis is the first domino that needs to fall before anything else serious happens, and we're a couple of days away, and a lot of teams have made their pitches, and a lot of conversations have happened, and the Bucks yesterday apparently were making counteroffers and things like that. Are we closer to knowing what's going to happen with Giannis?
Yes, we're closer. Yes, we are. It's that he's probably, if he's to be traded between now and Thursday at 3 o'clock East Coast time, 1 o'clock here in Salt Lake City, he's probably going to go to one of these 4 teams: New York, Miami, Golden State, or the Timberwolves. And what Bucks are saying, because the Bucks now have made a decision in their war room that we had a great run with Giannis for 12 and a half years, won championship back in 2021. They want to have a lot of assets, so they're going to, quote, rebuild with this, starting this draft right now. So but I know Bucks, it's hard to believe that the Bucks right now are in 12th seed in the East with only 18 wins. The Jazz have 15 wins. Nets, Wizards have 13 wins. Pacers have 13 wins. Pelicans 13 wins. And Kings 13 wins. I'm tired of saying 13 right now. And this shows you that. So they're in the bottom 6. And they're going to they're going to try to trade Giannis to get as much as they can for him. They're seeking young talent, but more importantly, future first-round draft picks. Who can match that as far as what they want? And if not, they're going to do over, Sean, the week of the draft, which is most times historically will be the 4th week of June.
New York, Miami, Golden State, and Minnesota? Is that what you said?
Minnesota, yeah. Yeah, because Minnesota right now, again, all 4 of those teams have a short window right now. Knicks want to win right now. Miami Heat, who's overachieving right now, they think that Giannis could help them as far as short-term, meaning right now, and long-term. Well, Giannis, so ironically, he's hurt right now with a right calf strain. He's not coming back probably. I'm at a doctor, but not until probably roughly March 7th. So even if they trade for him, he's not going to play for almost a month because of that calf strain. So it's even more different, dramatic.
So
those 4 teams.
Of those 4,
Sean, was going to be possibly James Harden. That's the one that I'm thinking about the last half a day or so. The Clippers with James Harden trying to move him on and try to get him to the Cavaliers for Darius Garland. It's actually very interesting if they can pull that off, both teams.
But staying with Giannis here for just a second, of those 4 teams, which fit do you like best? Which would be the most successful landing spot for Giannis?
Golden State. Because they have a short term right now. They're trying to win. So Giannis would help them. Coming to be part of that deal. If I'm Golden State, I would throw in possibly Bajenski or Moses Moody to make it work, plus draft picks or even more players. So again, Steph Curry's brilliance. They've had 4 championships already, 8 times in the NBA Finals. They think they can get one more possibly, or at least try to the ultimate before Steph Curry retires, which we know it's going to happen eventually, whether it's next season or the season after that. So that makes the most sense for them. And the Warriors, they're used to being a risk taker. With Jimmy Butler also.
when we talk about this being a trade instead of a free agent decision, does Giannis have any pull, any influence with the Milwaukee front office right now? Like, if he would rather go to Golden State than to Minnesota, and the packages can't be identical, obviously, but if they're similar, would Milwaukee do him the favor of sending him where he wants to go, given everything he's meant to the franchise? Or is this a total organizational decision with Giannis just having to ride it out?
Total decision by the organization, absolutely. He once had leverage like that, but no more. So it's interesting, as always, who has leverage, Sean, or perceived leverage as far as in a negotiation? A lot of times people have fool's gold. Giannis had that, we'll say, last summer, but not now. And it's so interesting. In the NBA, the world turns really, truly every 24 hours. And for NBA point guard, Sean, the world turns every 24 seconds. So again, I'm stuck on 24. You need 24 hours and 24 seconds. It just shows you that you think you have it all under control. Sean, I have it all under control. It's all about me. Oh, really? It's all about me? Sure. And it's not. And that's James Harden right now. We'll see with the Clippers, who, again, they have a short window that can they pull it off and move on James Harden and get Darius Garland, so they would gain 10 years on as far as the age. Harden's 36, and Darius Garland's 26, so it's 10 years. Even more intriguing right now, the agents for Darius Garland, Rich Paul, of Clutch Sports, who's based in L.A. That's a factor also. Now, with James Harden, the Clippers hurt his feelings when they said to him recently that we're not going to extend you. He wanted 2 more years, $80 million extension. They said we're not. And so that's what accelerated. Get me out of here. And that's what accelerated the last 2 or 3 days. That's been really interesting. Now, from the Cavs' point of view, I wouldn't do it because suddenly Donovan Mitchell is going to have next to him a sidekick, James Harden, who's absolutely ball dominant. So he dominates the ball. He's a really, I'll call him, Sean, on a good day, a casual defender, James Harden. If I'm Donovan Mitchell, I don't want him on my team. So we'll see who wins that as far as decision making. Let's go quickly about James Harden, though. Historically, what he's done, that as far as how he plays, is that he always wants to be in the center of attention, and that's really sets back so many franchises. So he's been traded. So back in 2012, he left the Thunder with that crew of Westbrook and also with Kevin Durant to go to the Rockets because the Thunder wouldn't extend him. In 2021, he left the Rockets to the Nets because the Nets were starting over. He wanted to be the focal point. In 2022, Nets got tired of him. They traded him to 76ers because the Nets made their mistake. They traded him for Ben Simmons just to get rid of Harden. In 2023, the Sixers moved on to the Clippers over a contract dispute with the 76ers, and now here we are, 2026. The Clippers are going to trade him to, question mark, possibly the Cavs or someone else the next day or two because of what? Because of an extension as far as they can get one. So, you see it, he's a problem.
Well, it feels like everyone kind of knows that at this point, Gordy. So, when do you...
Sean, I love it. What you're saying, Sean. I love what you're saying right now. I know where you're going at before you even said it out of it. The obvious is never obvious to the oblivious.
But I mean, I'm as close to oblivious as you can be when it comes to NBA basketball, and I look at somebody like James Harden and I say, wow, that's a guy who will help you win regular season basketball games, and he'll score you some points. And every team that has ever had him has come up short in their playoff expectations, their championship expectations. So I know it's not all his fault, but it's kind of all his fault. So when will teams start treating it that way?
Never. Because everyone likes his talent level, because he's a talented player. We're talking a lifetime score of 25 points a game and roughly 9 dimes. So he's a talented offensive player, and that's why teams always say these magical words. Oh, on our team, and with our chemistry, we can get him on our page as far as the winning. That's what they say. The Thunder, the Rockets, the Nets, the 76ers, and now the Clippers, they're saying no. So again, showing these magical words of Gordon Chiesa. The obvious is never obvious to the oblivious.
I like
Use
that.
those words right now. If you're driving right now on 215 or I-15, use those words right now. Your next meeting, when you can't say at a meeting in business where you say to yourself these awful words, I can't believe what I'm hearing at this meeting right now. This is so far from reality. Fill the blanks in. Was it an insurance company? Was it a basketball team? Was it an NFL team? Was it a baseball team? Was it some sort of medical team?
So, this is an unfair question, but we're talking about all-star, big-time all-star level players like Giannis, talking about James Harden, and there's always going to be something that comes back, right? It's not just picks. There's going to be some packages players. You mentioned Darius Garland. Who is the non-all-star that you could see getting moved this trade deadline that will be most impactful to whichever team he lands on? A non-all-star.
C.J. McCollum. He got traded already to the Atlanta Hawks, and C.J. McCollum could be also out there again the next day or two. Because every really good team, and the Hawks are trying to bite, fight, and claw to get into the play-in tournament. But again, if I'm the Hawks, you might be able to use C.J. McCollum for another trade. So everybody wants him on their team because he's a shot maker. He's 33 years young. He knows how to play the game with and without the ball. And if I'm a team that needs a guard, again, if I'm the Cavaliers, I'd rather have on my team C.J. McCollum than James Harden to play alongside of Donovan Mitchell. So he'd be out there right now. Should be. And I would take him right away.
All right, Gordy, what's your list today?
All right, my list today, and it's right on segment. So you and I didn't talk, but this is right on segment about the college draft and how some the banter type people, hey, are they impactful right away? Well, it takes X amount of years. Here's the list right now. The NBA players who were selected to be an all-star game in their rookie season. The NBA players that made their all-star game in rookie season, but I broke it down to really from 1980 until present. So it's 46 years. It's a very short list. Hey, we all thought possibly that Cooper Flagg was going to turn around the Mavericks and right away be a knockout punch, and that guy is very good. That's the first premise I'm saying. He's very good. Didn't make the All-Star team. Here's the guys since 1980 that have made the All-Star team as a rookie. In 1980, rookies, Bill Cartwright of the Knicks, Larry Bird of the Celtics, and Magic Johnson of the Lakers. 1982, Buck Williams of the Nets, Kelly Tripucka of the Pistons, Isaiah Thomas of the Pistons. In 1984, Ralph Sampson. In 1985, a guy named Michael Jordan of the Bulls and Akeem Olajuwon of the Rockets. In 1986, Patrick Ewing of the Knicks. In 1990, David Robinson of the Spurs. In 1992, Dikembe Mutombo of the Nuggets. In 1993, Shaquille O'Neal of the Magic. In 1995, Grant Hill of the Pistons. 1998, Tim Duncan of the Spurs. 2003, Yao Ming of the Rockets. And here's the last name. It happened in 2011. So this is right now, 2026. So it's been basically 15 years since a guy, a rookie, made the All-Star team. The last guy to do it was Blake Griffin of the Clippers. So, and the reason why is this. The other guys are good in the NBA, and now with most of the players entering the NBA at a way too young age, almost as teenagers or guys that are young 20s, they mostly lack inexperience, and there's a strength issue, a lack of, yet they're all what? Athletically gifted. This is a man's league, whether it's the NBA or the NFL. That's my list of today.
Who's the strongest guy in today's NBA, you think? Speaking of that man's league.
All right, strongest guy in the NBA. Steven Adams?
I was about to say, you hear like, I mean, he's hurt right now, right? But you hear these
Yeah, he's hurt.
these legendary stories about how, and it makes sense when you get like, it's one of 17 kids or something, and his size.
Yes.
Makes sense.
He's strong. And he's from New Zealand, which means what? He has no fear of anything.
I love
Just
Steven.
like you.
Well, I'd probably be afraid of my 16 brothers and sisters if I was him, but that's neither here nor there. Gordy,
Remember now, you're fighting at the dinner table. You're just fighting to get a piece of chicken.
and they're all giant, by the way. Every single one of them is huge like him. So, good luck feeding that brood.
So this week, for the listeners, this is the NBA trading deadline. It's going to be so interesting. The Jazz, we'll see, might make something as far as on the margins. Try to move a player or two on. The contract is up by July 1st, and try to acquire some assets, meaning maybe some future second-round picks. So that's what the Jazz probably might consider.
Gordy, I always appreciate your time, sir. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Sean. Peace out.
Gordy Chiesa, brought to you by our friends at Aladdin Industries, Utah's Velux dealer. All right, we're going to double up here. Jonathan Tavernari will join us on the other side for a little bit of red and blue, talking hoops. Is there concern in Provo that A.J. DeBonsa disappears a little bit in big games? The Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Just in time for some red and blue, brought to you by Murdoch Ford Santa Quin. If you're looking for tires right now, you don't think of this with dealerships that often. But right now, Murdoch Ford Santa Quin will beat your best price on a set of 4 tires, plus you get a $150 rebate. So give them a shot to beat the tire shops for the tires. Murdoch Ford Santa Quin, of course, also has great deals on cars, trucks, and SUVs right now. Low interest rates or no interest rates on some of the vehicles. Tell them OC sent you. Tell them Jonathan Tavernari sent you. JT, kind enough to join us for Red and Blue. Right as breaking news comes out ahead of this NBA trade deadline that involves the Utah Jazz. I mean, talk about timing. Right after we hang up with Gordy Chiesa, Memphis Grizzlies are trading an all-star, Jaren Jackson Jr., to the Utah Jazz, along with Jock Lawndale and Vince Williams Jr. The Jazz are giving up Walter Clayton Jr., Kyle Anderson, Taylor Hendricks, George Niang, and 3 first-round picks. Whoa! That's a big haul for Memphis, but the Jazz get a defensive-minded all-star, a one-time Defensive Player of the Year in the NBA, who's only 26 years old. Jonathan Tavernari, JT, welcome to the show. What do you think of this breaking news?
Well, first of all, is this the deal where Danny Ainge has given up the most first-round picks? Because usually Trader Danny is the one finessing people, and this is a lot of first-round picks. And that's the first thing I say. But, it's interesting because a lot of the things that have been said since Ryan Smith took over the Jazz is, are they going to win? Are they going to win? When are they going to win? Or when is it going to get going? What is this rebuild? What's going to happen? And I think landing Jaren Jackson Jr. at this point in time, maximizing Laurie, maximizing everything we're seeing from Keontae George, and also Walker Kessler. I mean, think about this. This is a lineup now that you play Laurie Markkinen as a small forward, not as a power forward. That's a pretty darn big lineup, right? Where you have, Keontae, and then, you find now your 2 guard for the future. Is it going to be AJ, right? Who is it going to be your 2 guard for the future? And then you have, Laurie, and then you have Jaren Jackson and Walker Kessler. That's a lineup that I think makes the playoff easily, right? And I'm not just talking about the play-in game. And so it's exciting, right? I know Ryan, big BYU guy. We actually saw each other and chatted for a bit on Saturday. And, it's interesting to see his passion for Utah, his passion for the Jazz. But I will say this. It is much funner to follow the NBA when your local team is doing well. When the Jazz are, a playoff contender, I actually watch more Jazz games than I do Lakers games, and I'm a diehard Laker fan back to when Eldon Campbell was the big man for the Lakers, right? And so, to me, I'm excited for this because it puts the Jazz in, hey, we're actually trying to win. We're actually turning the corner on our rebuild, which means that, that the rebuild is not, I don't want to say it's over, but they're now like, we've stacked enough pieces, we got to go do some things with this.
I couldn't agree with you more, and it's so funny. We started the show today. That was the first segment. How long should you wait as a pro sports fan on a rebuild, right? Is it a 5-year process? Is it a 7-year process? Are you impatient and you make it a 3-year process? And on that same day where I'm asking this question, it feels like the Jazz are like, all right, no more patience. We're going to take a big swing. And I love the fact that this is very clearly a defensive-minded move primarily. That's what Jaren Jackson Jr. is known for. He's an All-NBA defender. He is a one-time Defensive Player of the Year, as I already mentioned. And you've heard everyone in the organization and everyone who watches the organization express their distaste for the way that defense is being played with this Utah Jazz organization right now. So I love the fact that they went out and they addressed that from a player personnel standpoint. You brought in a guy who knows how to do it, who knows how to help establish that as a tone and a culture, and will demand accountability defensively from his teammates. So you're checking a couple boxes here for me. You're accelerating the time where people don't have to be patient anymore, and you're also addressing the defensive issues that this Jazz roster has had.
I agree, and that's the thing, right? I mean, it's impossible in today's NBA with the salary cap and the CBA the way it is for you to keep, a quote-unquote a dynasty together. I mean, think about the beginning of the season where everybody was talking about, OKC is a new dynasty, and, how far and how long ago does that seem that it was? And so, we're not going to, I have a very, if this was a betting show, I would say never bet on this, because I think the probability of having another dynasty like we saw with, look at Golden State, could even win 3 in a row with Kevin Durant and Steph Curry. Now, injury played a big role on that, right? And then you look at before them, the Spurs and the Heat, and, to me, the way I look at this is, I don't think we're going to see another dynasty in the NBA, and so the field is wide and ready to harvest, and go figure out a way to just, have all the stars align and go get yourself a championship.
Jonathan Tavernari is our guest here for Red and Blue, brought to you by Murdoch Ford Santa Quinn. So we'll see how this plays out for the Utah Jazz. Intriguing move as the first semi-blockbuster trade, at least, before this NBA trade deadline. Does not involve Giannis, but instead brings a Memphis Grizzlies all-star to Salt Lake City. Fun to see how this thing will play out. Jaren Jackson Jr. and a couple other guys, Jock Londale and Vince Williams Jr. are headed to the Utah Jazz in exchange for Walter Clayton, Kyle Anderson, Taylor Hendricks, George Niang, and 3 first-round draft picks, which, to JT's point, is uncharacteristic of the Angels to be giving away first-round draft picks. Usually they're collecting them, but we'll see how it plays out. Speaking of first-round draft picks, I want to talk to you about BYU basketball. And look, it's tough life is tough in the Big 12 Conference. A tough stretch, a matchup with Kansas, and now you got Houston coming. And we were talking about this the other day. The expectation for someone like AJ DeBonsa is probably unfairly high, because we all know the kind of money he's bringing in. We know what he was ranked as a recruit coming out of high school. Is he living up to the expectation? I know that there's time, and when he gets drafted, whatever NBA team is going to be patient, and they're going to find ways to maximize his potential. But BYU doesn't have that luxury. He's in Provo for just a few months. Is he delivering on his potential and living up to expectations, especially in these big games for
you? Yeah, and I think you hit the nail right on the head. Are we expecting too much of AJ DeBonsa? If you compare AJ DeBonsa to another player, and I'm not even talking about a Richie Saunders level player, I'm talking about just a general player in college, the expectations are through the roof. That's 100% fair thing to say. With that being said, the expectations put in on AJ are aligned with what you expect from the #1 player in high school, a McDonald's All-American, arguably the #1 prospect outside of the NBA, and someone that, is largely viewed as the #1 pick in the draft. And so when you consider these variables, I don't think the pressure that is being put on AJ is too much, because he's that good of a player. Because he has earned, pressure is a privilege, right? And that's something that he has earned. Now, I don't think that a lot of what's happening with BYU falls totally on AJ. Sure, against Arizona, he was 6 for 24, scored 24 points, but did not shoot the ball well. Sure, against Kansas, he didn't deliver, and, Darren Peterson outplayed him. But I think when you look at BYU as a whole, not only at AJ, the issues that BYU is facing right now, they are part fall on AJ, but there's a bigger part that doesn't. And so I think that you got to be able to separate the two and be able to say, the expectations of AJ DeBonsa are, issue A, and expectations and issues with BYU, falls on this other column, because there's just a lot going on right now, Sean.
What are those other things that are going on? That I mean, because obviously it's not a one-man band. That's a really talented roster. It's a really expensive roster. What are the other issues that when you look at it? And again, these big time matchups are the ones that matter. The level set when you talk about the talent on that roster is not, oh well, hopefully you win half of your Big 12 games. The expectation is that this is the team that can push to make the Final Four. So what are the other things besides AJ either living up in the big games or not? What are the other things that have your attention right now for this BYU basketball team?
Well, let's take a step back on everything. When this team was constructed, it was constructed with the big three, but then with Nate Pickens being the backup point guard, with Dawson Baker being a backup combo guard, with Brody Kozlowski being a spread-the-floor knockdown shooter. Now, ultimately, those guys had season-ending injuries. And so, automatically, everything that you expected to have in your supporting cast completely went out of the window. And so, that caused BYU to have to go and find Alexei Kostic, who has under-delivered and underperformed massively. That has caused BYU to have to play Mihailo Boskovic significantly more on as Tyler Stallensworth is actually trying to call me right now. I told him to turn on the Sean O'Callaghan show so he can hear me talking. And so to me, it's a significant thing because you don't have the way that you plan for the team to actually happen. And so from that perspective, they are now having to go into the third counter, the fourth corner counter, to actually be able to figure out how did they solve this problem. And then you look at the four starts a game. BYU, Kevin Young deserves all the credit for being a halftime adjustment coach and make great adjustments in the second half. Nonetheless, the way that BYU starts the game is extremely poor. So that's another issue. The fact that they have no outside shooting. We haven't even talked about Tyler Morus, who was supposed to be the sniper, was supposed to be the quote-unquote Trevin now of the situation, and he is shooting about 30% from three. I mean, this is not baseball where 30% average will make it to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
This is not very good. And so it's just one of those things that, BYU hasn't had luck on their side. And again, I think the criticism to everything I talked about is very, it's valid. You look at all of the talking heads, John Rothstein, I forgot, there was someone else from ESPN that mentioned CBS also saying the same thing. They're all saying the same thing, Sean. BYU also doesn't have a marquee win. If you look at it, their win against Wisconsin and then their win against Clemson highlight as their best wins of the season. And none of those teams are even, in a very good situation for that to be considered a quad one. And so BYU has 10 games left. They have 4 games against top 15 teams. And, I'm going back and forth with Jerome Jordan, with Ben Criddle, and a few other people, because I think for BYU to be a 3 or a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, they need to go at least 8-2 or most likely 9-1. And that's crazy, right? And so, I know I've gone a little bit too long, but what I would say is there's a lot of expectations because you have the number 1 player in the country. Your head coach was an NBA in waiting head coach, and the payroll that this NIL team has. And so, when you look at all of these factors, it's way more than just is AJ DeBonsa living up to the expectations.
That's fair, and you're never going too long because it's a thought-out answer, but it's fair to say, well, yeah, there's other things. That in college basketball, the timeline is so much different, right? I mean, we look at these college football rosters, and BYU they've done a great job on the football front as well of maximizing NIL and getting the right kind of guys who are there for, not just for the money, but also because they love BYU. And you have to look no further than this last transfer cycle where they did not really lose any significant players. That's a good group. You have time with that group. You have time to say, all right, well, we're paying this guy this much, and that's a lot of money, but we're going to get what we need out of him because he can't go to the NFL next year. He's going to have to stay here for a little while. We're going to have a chance for our coaches to influence him and develop him. And in college basketball, it's just so rapid. It's so sped up right now that I'm curious. It feels like the booster base, the alumni base, and obviously you're one of those people fully bought in on what is happening with BYU basketball. But if you squander this opportunity of having the number one player in the country, if you don't end up, and there's plenty of basketball left to play, they could go on a great tournament run in both the Big 12 and the NCAA tournaments. This is it's a total hypothetical here. If you don't live up to the expectation, will it change the level of investment, donation, support in the short term?
Well, so a couple of things. I think that, let me give another shout out to Kyle Collinsworth so he can stop texting me and I can pay attention to what I'm doing. Kyle, I got a contract with ESPN. Sean is about to fire me. Leave me alone.
Come on,
so,
Kyle.
But what I would say is, I'll use Kyle as an example. Kyle and I, we talk a lot about this team. We talk about basketball in general. To your comment about, hey, you guys have bought into this, I think we didn't have a choice. That's just the way of the world is right now. I mean, I could give you examples, Sean, of NIL happening in 6th grade here at the Utah scene at the basketball level, where 6th graders are actually, receiving money to be able to go play, for different teams and such. And so I think that's the reality that we live in right now, right? Right or wrong, good or bad, that's just the reality that we live in. And so because of that, you have to adapt. And I think BYU does a tremendous job. I don't think maybe Indiana has done a better job than BYU, right? Because they won the national championship for football this year. But BYU has done a tremendous job adjusting because you just didn't have a choice. You adapt or you die. And so now, to your point, BYU did have a very successful transfer portal of keeping their pieces together. But the main two pieces they kept together has been Richie Saunders and Keba, and those guys are delivering. But then to your point, it's not a one-man show, right? Basketball is one of those sports that you need about, in today's day and age, about 3 or 4 dudes that are able to contribute. And night in and night out, BYU doesn't get that, right? And so out of the big 3, 2 out of the 3 of them always deliver. And so they need every 3 of them to always be on, and that's just difficult, right? And then you need the supporting cast, which just isn't there. And so, but I fully agree with you, and I'm very curious to see how the BYU community, how the boosters, how the collectives, how all of that is going to react if this BYU team does not go beyond the Sweet 16. Well, but dang, JT, that's kind of crazy talk. BYU has only made to the Sweet 16 3 times in their history. One with Danny Ainge, one with Jimmy Fredette, and another one last year. You're absolutely right. But perception is reality. And the reality that we live in right now is the fact that BYU has the #1 player in the country, arguably the best head coach not in the NBA, a very deep NIL investment team. And if they don't if they don't go beyond where they went last year, I gotta tell you, this season is gonna be where do we go from here? How do we manage that? And I think that's a very fair thing to do. I'm very close to BYU. I work for BYU as an analyst. I get it. But again, what I'm sharing is not just my personal feelings, but that of pretty much all of Cougar Nation, which is you're going to ask some questions about, well, so what do we need to do to get to that level? Do we need to invest more money? Do we need the #1 and #2 player in the country? And again, there are ways that you can justify the situation with the injuries that I mentioned to you. But again, perception is reality. And, I personally think, Sean, the month of February will make it or break BYU season.
Well, you're absolutely right. You said it earlier. Pressure is a privilege, and it feels like this BYU basketball program and where the season is at right now which, by the way, is a great season. They're having an awesome year, but in order to make it worth it, I guess, with the 13, 15, whatever the dollar amount is, $1 million roster, you got to show that you can beat Houston. You got to show that you can beat Arizona. And you came close, but you got to actually get it done. You got to get one of these, maybe two of these quad one wins that are available to you in this Big 12 slate.
Yep.
And I mean, and I say this, all of this, knowing full well that Utah is so far away from this conversation right now that it probably sounds silly if there's BYU fans out there listening, like, what are you talking about? Why are you being critical of BYU? Well, because the programs are in very different places. And I hope we get to a point where I can complain about Utah losing to the number one Arizona Wildcats and their number one player not showing up well enough, because we're far away from that right now. But BYU is here. Are they going to be able to stay? That's my question.
Well, and then I think to your point, right? If the portal has, if Indiana has showed us anything, is that if the stars align and you also have very competent people in place, and you also get a few breaks here and there, anything is possible. Indiana totally shows that. I don't want to hear about, well, that's easy to say. No, it's not, because if you actually look at it, Signetti, he had been there for a while, so he's a competent guy. Kevin Young has been there for a year or so now. He's a competent guy. You happen to have an otherworldly, star in Fernando Mendoza, which you could be the same about AJ DiBonsa. And then you have a complementary supporting cast that's there to deliver, which BYU has it with a couple of players like Robert Wright III and Keba Keta and Richie Saunders. They just, unfortunately, injury has plagued them. And then you have the NIL investment to be able to fit the pieces around, because let's be realistic, Sean, long gone are the days where you're going to get, the Alex Jensens and the Michael Doliaks and the Andre Millers and the Keith Van Horns and the Chris Burgesses and the Jonathan Tavernaris or the Kyle Collinsworths, that they stay with the program long term and they become fixtures and known players from the program because of their long career. That you can kiss that goodbye out of the window. That ship has sailed. And so now it becomes a turnover of year over year where you truly be able to understand, what do we need to make this roster competitive this year, and adjust things today for now. And again, right, it's not an exact science, and unfortunately it's not one of those things that you can just throw money at it, which is why I say you can certainly have success, but you need the stars. You have to have a lot of things happen. And, BYU has a good start to it, having a competent coaching staff. And now you need a little bit of luck for the stars to align and make sure that when you invest, you make the right investments.
All right, before I let you go, who's winning the Super Bowl?
Oh man. The Indianapolis Colts. No, I'm just joking.
Seattle or New England? The Seahawks are the heavy favorite for a lot of people right now. I think most of us just don't feel a need to see the Patriots win a championship ever again. But who's going to take this one down?
Well, I mean, the Patriots are getting a lot of flack from the media, though, because not having Bill Belichick be a first ballot Hall of Famer, that is crazy. I mean, that is Utah BYU level of pettiness in the holy war on Twitter, Sean. My goodness. But I will say I'm going with the Seahawks. I'm going to go with my good friend Jerem Jordan, and we all live in a simulation, and every time that something has happened, the Seahawks won. And so, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's keep up with the simulation. So I'm going to go Seahawks 31-18.
All right. That's JT's official pick. Jonathan Tavernari, always appreciate your insight and your time. Thank you, my friend.
As always, Sean, it is my pleasure, and I hope you have a great day.
Jonathan Tavernari for Red and Blue. Red and Blue is brought to you by Murdoch Ford Santa Quinn. Go test drive the F-150s. They also have the F-150 Lightnings, the electric version of that truck. My buddy drives one of those things. Look, I don't know how well it hauls a boat, but it is a sick truck. Also, they've got right now, they'll beat any price on tires and give you a $150 rebate. So go check them out. Even if all you need is a set of tires and you're not shopping for a new car. Murdoch Ford Santa Quinn, the sponsor of Red and Blue. The Daily Dump, brought to you by Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Air, is coming next. A lot of stories to get to on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Plumbing, heating, air conditioning, anything that your house needs on those fronts, look for the truck with the duck. I told the story yesterday. I will reiterate Friday afternoon, okay? I'm leaving wondering, oh my gosh, there's this little pump leaking in my furnace room in the rental property. How much is this going to cost me? Am I going to be dealing with this all weekend long? One simple phone call to Valley Plumbing. Actually, it wasn't even a phone call. I used the online portal. Then after the show was over, that's when I got on the phone with them, and they took care of it before dinner time on Friday, which meant I got to go into my weekend stress-free, very manageable price points, all of it. The peace of mind was the best part. The truck with the duck and their certified plumbers and HVAC technicians will take care of whatever problems arise at your home. All right. Daily Dump. Robert Kraft, also not getting into the NFL Hall of Fame as a first ballot Hall of Famer. Despite owning a team for 6 Super Bowl championships, look, this is going to sound like I'm anti-rich person, I'm anti-owner right now. I assure you that is not the case. I'm an aspiring rich person. I would love to be a billionaire. I would love to own a sports franchise. Okay? Someday, if a major miracle happens, I will own the San Francisco 49ers. I don't think there's really a whole lot you can do as an owner to deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Is that a hot take? If you're an owner that spearheads some kind of effort that changes the landscape of professional sport, if you were an owner in the NFL back in the day when it was growing and emerging, and maybe you were one of the people that pushed it onto television and made it the product that it is right now, if you were an owner working with the commissioner during like an NBA, ABA merger or something like that, then maybe you belong in the Hall of Fame. If you were the owner that signed on the dotted line for the first time, letting someone be a free agent, I don't know, but has Robert Kraft, and if this is an ignorant take, please, 877-353-0700. Aside from just being wealthy enough to own the franchise and not bleeping it up from there, what has Robert Kraft truly done? I know his charitable contributions, they do a lot of stuff. He uses that Patriots plane to fly troops around and things like that, deliver supplies for folks in need. That is all wonderful. That's great. I don't know if it puts you into a Pro Football Hall of Fame. Again, if you're, am I missing some accomplishment where he was a pioneer in some effort and deserves to be in the Pro Football Hall? And it's not isolated to Robert Kraft, by the way. I'm talking about as an owner, your Hall of Fame is the fact that you're a billionaire and you're lucky enough to be a billionaire. Right?
And you won.
You're in the financial Hall of Fame.
You've overseen 6 Super Bowls.
But that's all you've done is oversee.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like that's a Hall of Fame, dude. Like you don't need to be in Canton. Like,
I don't get it.
You're fine. But let me just say this: Pat Bowlen, longtime Broncos owner, he's a Hall of Famer.
Okay.
Eddie Bartolo Jr., if I'm not mistaken, the old or not Eddie, right? Anyway, the Bartolo family, the original owners of the Niners,
yes.
Right? He's in. I'm not sure. Like Jerry Jones is in. I think Jerry Jones is one of those guys that you're talking about that has grown the sport, has made the Cowboys a worldwide, as much as an NFL team can be a worldwide brand, right? That's probably Hall of Fame worthy, as much as we don't like Jerry Jones, if you're not a Cowboys fan, right? And a lot of Cowboys fans don't like Jerry Jones. He's made the game bigger by making the Cowboys the biggest brand, right? I think that's fair, but I'm not sure Pat Bowlen did that. All due respect. I know, all due respect to all the Broncos fans in this market that probably don't like hearing that. Bartolo probably didn't do that either. He's probably more like those guys are probably more like Robert Kraft than Jerry Jones.
Now, I will,
right?
To be fair to the DeBartolo family.
Excuse me.
A lot of San Francisco 49ers players talked about the fact that ownership was hyper involved with them.
Okay.
And like Jerry Rice has quoted that Eddie DeBartolo is the reason we won so many Super Bowls.
All right.
Now, is that a genuine statement, or is that somebody realizing
Pandering to his owner.
realizing that the guy who signs the check and shows up at your locker every week is someone you should probably say nice things about? I don't know, but
I think Jerry Jones is the only one in recent memory that's doing what you said.
well, Al Davis was
Al
huge.
Davis, and Jerry was inducted in 2017. I'm not sure there's another owner outside of Al Davis and the Rooney family with the Steelers that you can say, I don't know, that you can say, yeah, that guy is not just a billionaire who oversaw championships. They actually grew the game.
And look, it's probably an ignorant business take, right? It's probably me just being like, not acknowledging the intricacies of how difficult it is. I do find it funny, by the way, that now we're talking about a double snub for the Patriots. So as that franchise goes back to a Super Bowl, everyone, or not everyone, but enough people in the NFL world have decided, you know what? We actually don't love your legacy, Bill and Robert Kraft. And the petty sports fan in me enjoys that very much.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind, we've talked ad nauseum about a Spygate scandal that is keeping Bill Belichick from being a first ballot Hall of Famer. How about the borderline criminal activity that Robert Kraft was recently involved in? Like, I'm not going to get into it. It's a little sensitive, and we're a family show, but, like, maybe that got brought up in the conversations. Do we want that guy representing our sport in the Hall of Fame no matter what his team did?
And again, here's the thing, right? If you're a player, like, who had some habits or issues that people find to be morally reprehensible, most of the time, even the fans, even the most, like, morally centered fans acknowledge, like, well, I get it. I wouldn't want my dad acting that way. But that's a guy with, 50 sacks in 4 Super Bowl seasons. Like, that guy's a Hall of Famer.
Lawrence Taylor comes to mind.
That's who I'm thinking of. If you're Robert Kraft, though, and it's just like, and your fellow owners are just like, dude, we get it. You, like, you lucked into Tom Brady, but also you're kind of embarrassing us with this other stuff.
You're pretty creepy dude.
I don't know.
Okay, we'll just put it that way. If Spygate got brought up for Bill, I'm sure the massage parlor stuff got brought up for Robert Kraft. Just putting that out.
I will say this: Eddie DeBartolo was pardoned recently by President Trump because he was involved in a scandal where he bribed his way into having a riverboat gambler's license.
This was after he was in the Hall of Fame, though, right?
Yeah.
Because he's been in the Hall of Fame a while.
Yeah.
So he's fortunate. Maybe if he was up for the Hall of Fame now, like Robert Kraft, maybe that's something that would keep him out.
And by the way, raise your hand if you knew that about the former owner of the San Francisco 49ers.
Did not know.
Because this was a pre-internet crime.
Yeah.
This was him. He pled guilty to bribing the governor of Louisiana $400,000 so he could be gifted a riverboat gambling license.
That's amazing.
Which is effectively, by the way, just a license to print money. If you're like a gambling, you now get to own a riverboat casino. We've all watched Ozark at this point, haven't we?
Or a shout out to an old classic, Mel Gibson classic Maverick.
Oh, there you go.
That literally about a riverboat.
Speaking of scandals and people embroiled in scandal, Terry Rozier. Remember we talked about Terry Rozier
and gambling,
and the issues that.
Look at that segue.
That Terry Rozier had. He's currently on suspension from the NBA, and he and his attorney successfully won the case that he should still be paid while he is suspended for like allegedly fixing games and gambling in the NBA. He still now, because of this legal decision, gets paid by the NBA because under the collective bargaining agreement, you can only be suspended without pay for domestic violence, child abuse allegations. Those are the only things covered.
Wow.
Which means game fixing, gambling, whatever, hey, suspended with pay, baby.
That's going to be in the next. That'll be in the next CBA. I think that's fair to say.
The league is going to be like, we need to add that.
This, if I'm not mistaken, the current CBA that we're working under was before they were allowing gambling companies to be involved. It might have been
correct.
ratified, so that would. If anyone's wondering why did they miss that, that's probably why. Speaking of NBA, another trade.
Yeah, what's
related
this other trade?
to the Jazz, but not involving the Jazz. Mike Conley headed to the Bulls.
All right.
In a let me pull up the details. It's Mike Conley and another T-Wolves player.
Jaden Ivey.
Jaden Ivey, or a Pistons player, excuse me, headed to the Bulls. 3-team trade with the Bulls and the Pistons. So that's Bulls leveling up a little bit that way. They had
Blockbuster.
the Bulls had a hot start to the season, and I still laugh about it because they started like 5-6-0, and people were like, Bulls going to the finals? I'm like, no, they're probably going to regress to the mean. And look at, if you pull up the standings, they're like 10th in the East. So they've been just okay since then. This helps them level up some, probably makes them feel better about their playoff chances, but this doesn't all of a sudden make them finals contenders like we thought in October. Some people thought in October.
All right. I put a question out yesterday about what Olympic event people are most excited to watch. I said, you got to take hockey out because we're all hardcore hockey heads now here in the state of Utah, and especially in Salt Lake City where the Utah Mammoth play. And I said, all right, what Olympic event are you most excited about? Now, curling, there was a lot of curling answers. James is our resident curling consultant and expert, by the way, as the Olympics start this week.
If anyone has any questions about the game, about brooms in particular,
All right, good.
Go ahead and hit me up.
All right. So curling was a hot answer.
Yeah.
Downhill
Understandably.
skiing, a lot of people are into the downhill skiing, and it is a lot of fun to watch. And it's amazing, edge of your seat type stuff. And we talked about the unfortunate injury sustained by Lindsey Vonn, the American skiing legend, who a week before the Olympics,
Summit County resident as well, Utah.
crashed and hurt herself in Switzerland, and
Montana.
in whatever that was,
Montana.
Switzerland. Here's the other unfortunate thing, right? Ruptured ACL. You think Lindsey Vonn's going to let that keep her off the slopes in her final Olympic Games?
Ruptured ACL.
She's 41 years of age and destroyed her knee a week before the games, and guess what she says? I'm still doing it.
4 days ago, by the way, OC. That crash happened 4 days ago.
She goes full Leonardo DiCaprio, Wolf of Wall Street. I'm not leaving. She is going to compete in these Olympic Games.
Amazing.
At 41
Was
on
she
one leg.
confident she'll compete? She's not ready to guarantee it.
Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story, James.
But she's not ready to guarantee it. But I mean, it's crazy, right? Like that happened 4 days ago, not even a week ago, and she skied today.
This has Disney, or at least Hallmark Special, written all over it.
Hallmark Special.
All right.
The Indiana football and Lindsey Vonn improbable Olympic competition. Disney, get the movies going.
You know what? Somehow make them into one movie.
Call it 2025.
Somebody
26.
write a May-December relationship between Fernando Mendoza and Lindsey Vonn, right?
Is the first time he's ever talked to a girl.
Yeah. James, we just came up with the blockbuster of next summer.
That does actually sound very Hallmark-ish.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Fernando Mendoza on the publicity tour, Heisman Trophy, national champion. He's like, I'm going to the Olympics, baby. Who's going to send me to the Olympics? And the first girl that he's willing to actually have a flirtatious conversation with happens to be a 41-year-old skiing legend
Who doesn't look like a 41-year-old, let's be honest. There.
Fernando could do a heck of a lot worse. All right?
Chase the cougar right there.
Hoosiers and Cougars
Hoosiers
is the name of the movie. And everyone's going to be like, what is Indiana and BYU?
Well, she's friends with Ryan Smith, so there's your BYU connection.
Listen, I need this movie to be made now. I need a real-life Fernando Mendoza, Lindsey Vonn connection to happen where, perfect example of what his effusiveness and bubbly personality and never quit attitude, just somebody at NBC, whoever, call Fernando Mendoza and tell him, hey, we're flying into Milano Cortina and we're going to have you give Lindsey Vonn a pep talk as she goes and tries to ski in an Olympic event one-legged. And he's just going to go out there and he's going to pep talk her and she's going to be like, whoa, this young man, he spoke to my soul. It'll be beautiful romance.
That does sound very Hallmarkish. Very high budget Hallmark.
And Lindsey, can you imagine the scene of Lindsey Vonn meeting Fernando Mendoza's beautiful mother Elsa? How great that scene would be.
Oh yeah.
I mean, come on.
She says my kids love Frozen. I don't know if she is. She's got to be a mom, right? Maybe she's not.
I don't think she is. I don't know.
Maybe she's not a mom. I just I assume because she is in her 40s now, she might be a mom. But yeah, she says to Elsa, I know people who love Frozen. This is meant to be.
All right. We have planned your life for you, Fernando Mendoza and Lindsey Vonn.
Yeah, and Lindsey Vonn. The rest of we've planned your retirement, Lindsey. But no, this story of her potentially competing is insane. And you want to know what my favorite quote is from the ESPN article that broke this story? She says, there's no swelling. I got a knee brace. I'm confident I can do it. It's like, okay, ruptured is the word. That's what happened to your ACL. Not a tear. It got ruptured. But I got a knee brace. I'll be fine. Go Lindsey Vonn. This is amazing. I hope she's able to do it. Sunday, by the way, would be her first event.
Kevin on the text line says, since you got to put Kurt Signetti in this movie, and he wants Dan Aykroyd to play Kurt Signetti in the movie.
Make it a comedy. Why not?
Derek Green says that I was railing against Kraft. He's also been quite instrumental in getting huge media rights deals for the NFL. And he built his stadium using his own money, which some people think deserves Hall of Fame honors.
Sure. I mean, that's a rare thing, but if that's the bar,
again, but
kind of sad.
From a pro football standpoint, is that something that really qualifies you?
So he's been a big part of their last run of media TV rights and other multimedia deals that have made the NFL multi-billion-dollar corporation, right? Like, okay, but if someone else was the owner of the Patriots, wouldn't they also have been instrumental? I'm not sure how much credit he should be getting for that. Like, he was the key to the NFL being awesome, and
hey,
like the money would have come to the table anyway.
I will say this: if somebody wants to give me the job of making sure that the NFL secures a massive media rights deal, and if I'm able to do that, I get into the Hall of Fame. I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame. It's literally the #1 sports product in the United States of America. You could send Borat into that negotiation, and they're still coming out with $10 billion.
They'd laugh their heads off, and then they'd be like, how much money do you want?
Right, guys, we really, 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 really want the NFL.
You realize that the MASH season finale might have been the only other TV show that outdid the Super Bowl, and that was in the 70s or 80s, right? you don't need a Robert Kraft to be a key negotiator in the TV deals.
Hey, look, we're sounding like bona fide haters.
We are,
I think we've crossed over into that realm.
I mean,
I appreciate I appreciate the feedback on the text line.
It's not nothing, I guess, but I'm not sure that's enough either.
By the way, the MASH finale, 105.9 million average viewers. That means 60% of American households were watching the MASH series finale. In 1983, as far as I'm aware, the greatest year on record so far in human history.
And nothing to do with MASH for that reason. There's another big thing that happened in '83.
You're welcome, everybody, for being born in 1983.
Should we quickly rehash our thoughts on JJJ to the Jazz?
Well, we'll take a quick one here, and we'll come back. Blockbuster trade and the Utah Jazz are involved. No, it doesn't mean Giannis is coming to Salt Lake City, but you get an all-star, an all-NBA performer on the defensive side of the ball, which is where you need the most help. And I think most importantly, you have announced from the front office, rebuild, we're not calling it that anymore. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Utah Jazz games are going to get a lot more interesting after this blockbuster trade involving the Jazz, and the best place for you to go watch those games at any sporting event is Big Willie's, 1717 South Main Street in the heart of Salt Lake City. Look for the building with the big Mammoth mural on the west side. Tell them OC sent you. Take advantage of the delicious food menu. Not just bar food, not just the fried stuff. Of course, they have that. I prefer to get all of my stuff with tater tots on the side because deep down inside, I'm 9 years old. They also have excellent salads, soups, nice little diet plate, which is like you can get grilled chicken with a little cottage cheese if you're being health conscious right now. They're always running drink specials every single day. They've got a partnership with Outlaw Distillery. They have a rare bourbons collection, and they have the #1 pool hall in the state of Utah. I didn't decide that. You didn't decide that. Big Willie's didn't decide that. The people voted on it and named Big Willie's the best pool hall. So 1717 South Main, tell them OC sent you. When you're watching your Jazz games, your Mammoth games, your Super Bowl this coming Sunday, whatever. Jeff Schwartz is going to join us in about 5 minutes, but if you're just tuning in, you're just hopping in your car to maybe grab some lunch, go to Big Willie's and grab the lunch special. But let me tell you, the Utah Jazz decided to get active before this NBA trade deadline, and Jaren Jackson Jr., one-time Defensive Player of the Year in the NBA, multiple-time All-NBA Defensive Performer, he's now going to be wearing a Jazz uniform. The Jazz are sending Walter Clayton Jr., Kyle Anderson, Taylor Hendricks, George Niang, and here's where the kicker is, 3 first-round draft picks in exchange for the All-Star Jaren Jackson Jr. and Jacques Londale, John Conchar, and Vince Williams Jr. in the deal. So, this effectively is a trade for Jaren Jackson Jr. in exchange for 3 first-round picks. The rest of it, with maybe the exception of Walter Clayton Jr., I think kind of evens itself out.
Who knows? Is Taylor Hendricks involved? Did I get that right? Who knows? Maybe Memphis can unlock the potential that the Jazz saw and many other teams saw in Taylor Hendricks that made him a top 10 pick a couple years ago. He could end up playing a part in Memphis rebuild here, but yeah, right now it's what you said. It's 3 picks for JJJ. Jacques Landale's a serviceable bench player as like a second or third string big, but you don't know how long the Jazz are going to keep a guy like that.
Here's the other question. Restricted free agency for Walker Kessler, right? Now, are you willing to go into the first apron for that front court of Jaren Jackson Jr., Lauri Markkanen, and Walker Kessler? If it comes to that, that's a formidable defensive front if you could pull it off.
It's also 3 bigs, though. And I know Lauri offensively can play the 3, and he's played really well as a 3-man. He's not necessarily been great defensively at that position. Obviously, a healthy Walker, and Jaren Jackson Jr., no one's going to get to the rim and be able to get a shot off, presumably, right? Those are 2 great shot blockers. A former Defensive Player of the Year, All-Star, who you just traded for, and Walker Kessler, who could be a future Defensive Player of the Year. He's that kind of rim protector and defender. That's my question, though. How does this improve your perimeter defense, which is the biggest problem for the Jazz, especially with a healthy Walker in the fold? I just don't think this is the right move to make or the right time to make this move. I like JJJ, but this makes you too good to keep your first round pick, which means OKC's going to probably get a top 10 pick, probably. And I just think if you're going to right now throw away your pick, it should have been for a star that immediately puts you in the title contention.
No,
right?
this is not a play for the second half of this season. Jaren Jackson Jr.
But there's still that could have.
Now you're gonna actively tank. You were able to do this now, and they wanted to. Will Hardy, especially, has grown so visibly frustrated with the defensive prowess and effort of his team,
and he's getting lots of criticism for it himself. He's starting to.
And you just brought in one of the better defensive players, and probably the best defensive player available in this trade market. 3 years ago, he was the Defensive Player of the Year in the NBA, and you brought him in, and now he's going to sit down a lot for the rest of this season.
And that could happen. I don't know. We heard a high-ranking executive say. So I don't know, OC.
Look, I do know they are not going to sacrifice that pick. That is, if that pick was going to anybody else, you might just be like, all right, it's going to it's going to the Orlando Magic. We can live with that. The fact that you would have to give that pick up to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are already better and younger than you can't do it. So they're going to tank, but they're now doing this thing where they say, all right, we have decided. We have Keontae. We're going to do our best to keep Walker. We've got Lauri Markkanen. and we like what we see with Ace Bailey, but we need defensive presence, and we need someone who's young enough but is still a veteran. We grab a 26-year-old guy who's a multiple-time All-Star, and then we add A.J. DeBonsa, and that is the core we move forward with to try to compete next year. This is, to me, an announcement that the Utah Jazz are saying, we're done asking for your patience. We're done doing this stupid rebuild thing after this year. We're going to put our foot to the gas pedal in the 2020, well, you got the trade window for the draft, and then you got the draft itself. So 2026, 2027, we're trying to put this team in the playoffs.
I just think you could have guaranteed, by staying pat, you could have virtually guaranteed that you're keeping that pick, and without getting a massive fine from the NBA for deliberately tanking, like 2 years in a row, by the way, it would be. And you could have made
You're a billionaire, you don't care about a couple hundred grand.
You could have, right, but you could have taken a swing like this in the offseason or next trade deadline.
Maybe.
I just don't think it's the right time to make this move, and I don't think that JJJ is a good enough player to be like, let's go ahead and jeopardize our pick. But to your point, they probably will just sit him down a lot anyway. So,
and look, if he doesn't help fix your defensive problems, I'm gonna look back on this trade and be like, wow, you gave up a lot for a guy that didn't have that massive of an impact. But this Jazz team is abysmal defensively, and this is a guy that has never been part of an effort like that. So we'll see how it plays out. And I got a text from Spence. Sorry, I'm just seeing this now, Spence Checketts. Yes, we do want to talk to you about it, but we got to take a break, and Jeff Schwartz is going to join us next to preview the Super Bowl, talk about everything else going on in the football world. The Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Hour number 3, beginning 10 minutes late because I'm bad at my job. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, and we welcome Jeff Schwartz, college football and pro football insider. Jeff, welcome. How are you?
I didn't know you could talk basketball. I begged you for so many years to talk more basketball.
Did you? Did you beg me to talk basketball, Jeff?
All of a sudden, the Jazz make a trade and you're all in on it.
Okay. Yeah, you. When people hear Jeff Schwartz, they know he wants to talk basketball.
I am 16-5 in the last 2 nights betting women's college basketball. It's the best sport to bet on, by the way.
You are excellent at betting all women's sports.
I am. It's just fun. It's funny enough that, and you know the reason why I started watching women's basketball is because we just covered it on our show because the Pac-12 was good. And Tara Vanderveer, legend, friend of the program,
friend of the program,
interviewed person, right? We ever interviewed.
I think we decided she was the most interviewed person that we checked in with. Yeah.
Her or Bill Bender. Those were the two.
we talked so much to Bill Bender as well. You know what? I actually feel bad. We haven't had Bill Bender on this show, but like maybe one or twice. That's bad. That's bad by me. That's my fault.
It's not football season though.
Well, let's talk about football. And we discussed the Bill Belichick snub, and now we're the Robert Kraft snub. What do you think?
Yeah, I look. If the process is such to where you can't vote in Belichick or Robert Kraft, then the process is bad, right? And
well, you can though. They can.
Right, but the voters
they chose not to.
Right, but some of them said I wanted to vote for Ken Anderson instead of Bill Belichick, and that means the process is wrong, right? Because they, in their minds, they thought, oh, you know, Bill will get in next year. But Ken Anderson is not a Hall of Famer over Bill Belichick. Neither is Robert Kraft, by the way. The architects of the best dynasty in all of professional football, in the history of football. Now, you know, they had two separate dynasties, honestly, right? There was the 3 and 4 years and the 3 and 5 years, 10 years apart. If those aren't first ballot Hall of Famers, what's a first ballot Hall of Famer? What's the point of this process if those are not the first guys in when they had the opportunity to be in? And I get it. Look, they'll be in next year. All right, make them wait, whatever. But to me, the process is bad where those guys aren't just immediately into the Hall of Fame in year one.
I'm ignorant on a lot of things. I was genuinely ignorant to the fact that there's enough people close enough and influential enough to make decisions like this who had like serious distaste for the Patriots and that particular dynasty. I thought that I didn't like it because I got bored with it, and you know, Boston sports fans are insufferable, including my own sister. But I'm like, what? I thought that they were kind of like beloved in the NFL circles, and apparently not.
I thought so too, but again, when you listen to the people who have come out publicly and said we didn't vote for Bill Belichick or Robert Kraft, it's what I said. It's like, oh well, you know, there's like we can only vote for 3 guys, and we thought you know those other 2 were more deserving. So I think everyone thinks they're Hall of Famers. They just don't think that it was their time to get in on the first ballot. And I just disagree with it. I disagree with that mindset, and that's why I think the process. Look, we talked a lot about this with Mike Leach, where he was what 1 win away from making the College Football Hall of Fame. Yes. Right, the threshold was 60%. One person was 59.
Like 59 point something.
Yeah, something like that. And obviously he passed away before he could get there. And they changed the rules. You're in, of course. Mike Leach is in. Belichick and Kraft will still get in. But I think my point is that a process where they don't get in right away, to me, is just bad process. I think it's just sort of an error by the Hall of Fame voters. I mean, now, whenever Belichick gets talked about, we're going to have to hear that, like, you know, that he wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer. It just feels like that's not great for the Hall of Fame to have to hear that all the time.
Let me ask you, this is based on a recent ESPN mock draft. What is better for someone's career as an offensive lineman? Being drafted 6 overall to play for the Browns or 27 overall to play for the 49ers?
Oh, the 49ers. But, I mean, the money is the big difference between 7 and 26. Now, if you're a good lineman, you're kind of going to probably be good anywhere, to be honest with you. But is this about Fano or Logo?
Both. So the most recent ESPN mock draft, was it Matt Miller, said Fano at number 6 to the Browns. Not the first tackle taken. He's got Mauingoa from Miami going 3rd overall.
I think he ends up playing guard in the NFL, though. I'm kind of curious if that ends up panning out that way. Iafano, the Miami kid.
And then Lomu going 27 to the San Francisco 49ers, where, I mean, I look at that. Obviously, I love the local connection. That's my favorite team. But also, you don't have to play right away because I think Trent Williams has another year or two in him, and you can understudy for one of the best to ever do it.
Well, wouldn't he just play right tackle?
Maybe.
Yeah, I think he just play right tackle. There's no waiting anymore. You draft the first round, you play immediately. But you immediately go to a winner, right? And you go to a place that's stable. Your coach is there forever, right? I mean, Shanahan's going nowhere. Versus obviously Todd Monken. It's how long is he going to be the coach there? And instability in Cleveland. Obviously Joe Thomas was there for so many years, but there's so much instability there that I would much rather. Look, it's easy to sit here and say this from my chair, right? When it's not my money involved in this, but I think we're finding out, Sean, more and more now that fit matters like more than maybe anything else, right? And
but does it matter more for linemen? Because we've seen
absolutely.
because if you go back and you look at people who've been successful for the Browns in the last 20 years, you can only pick linemen as examples. So maybe it's not as big of a deal for that position.
I mean, I think Joe Thomas is going to be good anywhere, right?
Yeah.
But then it comes down to quality of life, right? It comes down to an opportunity to win. I mean, Joe Thomas, I think, played in one playoff game, maybe. Like those. This is going to. Go up to the Niners, you have a chance to be a winner every year. And that quality of life and the ability to get a second contract, this, to me, it's the reason why you want to go to a better organization. And so those are more than just simple reasons why.
All right, Super Bowl is this weekend. You're not attending the Super Bowl, right?
No, I'm going to San Francisco for a few days for media stuff, but yeah, I'm going tomorrow morning, but not. I have to go to a party, so.
Okay, so just so people know the type of personality of Jeff Schwartz, if you have not listened for years when he and I talk to one another, Jeff will go to the Super Bowl city to do Radio Row and to do that kind of stuff and just suffer through the things that everyone else would be like, this is amazing. I get invited. I'm walking past tables full of crab legs and shrimp cocktails, and I'm mingling and rubbing elbows with the stars. Jeff hates all of that.
Yeah. I was like, I was thinking my flight's at 5:30 in the morning, and I probably won't get to my hotel room on Wednesday night, San Francisco, until I don't know, 11 p.m. I'll be up 24 hours. That's my least favorite thing to be doing in the world, but. My agent, you gotta go, you gotta shake hands and see people, and I was I mean, whatever you say. So it's gonna be a quick in and out. Leave Friday.
All right. I mean, if you felt like it, you could attend the game, but you don't want to.
No, Meredith decided that she's gonna buy. I love when Meredith just has these ideas. She decided we're gonna do a big Super Bowl party this year, and she ordered Alaskan king crab and a bushel of oysters.
Okay, I like that.
And she wanted to set up a pit to cook the oysters in. I was like, how about no? She's like, I'll buy cinder blocks.
Wait, in your backyard? Burn the grass and have a pit?
Yeah, she's like, she said to me, I'll go buy the cinder blocks and the grate. I'm like, how about no? How about I'll just cook on the grill? What's wrong with you? It's just, there's just no explaining that person to anybody whatsoever. We had to talk this weekend, by the way. We are looking forward to when you guys come out here. For
That's right.
I think our cousins. I think her cousin wants to come also. So we might need 4 tickets.
Ooh.
I think Sean could do that for us.
Yikes. I don't know. 4? That's kind of a big ask.
I'll get a media credential. Just 3 tickets. I'm gonna cover the fight for Fox.
It'll be perfect. We'll get you in for sure. All right, let's talk about the game itself.
Yeah.
Look, Seattle. It feels like the people are being relatively dismissive of the Patriots' chances here. How do you feel about the matchup?
So, I think I have this right. Aaron Schatz, VP of football. I think it's now at FTN, but he's the DVOA. That's his baby, right? He put out an article ranking all the Super Bowl teams that ever have played Super Bowl. And where would you? So I think it's 98 teams, right? It's Super Bowl 60. My math is not right there. I don't know if my math is right. He ranked all the teams. Where would New England rank?
Well, I mean,
Actually, I think it's from 1970. He started doing. His DVOA numbers only went back to then. So
okay,
if
we're at Super Bowl 60, there's been 118 teams that have played so far.
It's just 96 teams that he's able to that he's data on. 96 teams. Where would they rank? Like
I don't know, like 90.
They're 81.
Oh,
they're here. Like good for them, but they're not a great team. And I think Seattle is a much better football team. It's interesting. After the game last weekend, I think everyone sort of immediately was like, "Oh yeah, Seattle's better. They're going to win," right? And then with time, because that's what we have time before the game. People start figuring out ways that their team's going to win. And I feel like this week has been a lot of, New England, I'm like, no, I'm not believing New England all of a sudden. I mean, I watched enough football. If I liked Seattle last week, why would I change my opinion now? There are ways that New England can win, and that I think revolves around Sam Darnold just not playing well, right? That sort of pumpkin Sam Darnold that we thought we got rid of, right? Because he played so well last week. They forced him a mistake, Sean. New England can win the game. I don't think they're going to.
Who's the most important player in the game, not at the quarterback position for New England?
Christian Gonzalez has to play well, and they have to find ways to stop JSN. So that'd probably be the guy I would look at. And then Will Campbell, the left tackle, has to play better. He's just the young kid hasn't played very well since he came back from injury, and it's been a problem with left tackle for them.
How many guys were you coached by in the NFL that were younger than you in your career?
0.
It feels like, Davis Webb, who we covered when he's going to be a coordinator. Like
Sean Mannion's a coordinator. I missed him by like 2 years in college.
These guys are. Davis Webb is 31 years old, and he's going to be calling plays for NFL teams. Like this is, the dynamic is already interesting when you talk about how young college coaches are now.
Yeah.
You still don't have 20-year-olds coaching 22-year-olds. When you're a 31-year-old coaching a 35-year-old, I imagine there is a strangeness to that dynamic.
Sean McVay did it with some of the older Rams players.
100%, yeah.
We've talked about this before. It feels like a younger coach's game, right? They're able to relate to the players a lot better now. The players are personality-wise just different. Right? They grew up in the social media era. It's just different, right? And some of the coaches, like older coaches, I think have trouble with that concept. And the younger coaches they just relate better to these players. And younger coaches typically have creative things, creative minds. They have different ways to attack a defense or offense, and they have an energy and a youthfulness that really sort of goes through the whole building. And I get why they're getting the opportunities, right? Why not try that? I think teams are trying to find the next Sean McVay, right? The next Kyle Shanahan, who's not young anymore compared to when he was first hired. Teams are searching that out.
Jeff Schwartz is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things football ahead of the Super Bowl coming from Santa Clara, California. Do you know if the Patriots or the Seahawks are using the 49ers practice field this week?
One of them, they probably have to, right? I think one uses them, one uses San Jose State, I think.
I wouldn't. If I were one of these Super Bowl teams, go next to that power station,
Of course you would believe in that. The Niners have been there for like 50 years.
We already talked about this, but perception is reality, okay? So if you're Jackson Smith and Jigba and you hear the buzzing of that thing while you're practicing, you never know.
You do never know. The Niners are setting you up to fail.
It would be the Seahawks, by the way. The Niners would put the Seahawks there.
Well, the Patriots are the home team, so I think they get the 49ers facility, I guess. I think New England is they're wearing their all whites. It's just not my choice on the home team.
Bad choice.
Why would you wear all white?
I am kind of anti all white uniforms most of the time, especially white helmets. I'm not a big fan of white helmets, but
I mean, the Rose Bowl helmets were nice.
those were cool. They changed my mind a little bit. The white Ute Proud helmets have changed my mind a little bit on that, but in general, I'm not a big fan of white helmets.
All white uniforms make you look very fat.
Maybe that's why I don't like them.
I mean, that seems to be a concern for me, obviously, in my playing career. All white, you look just fat, dude. Ugh, brutal.
So, since we last talked, there have been more changes in the NFL coaching carousel. Which one has been most noteworthy to you?
You know, I'm very curious about Clint Kubiak to the Raiders. He's Seattle's OC. I think he's done a fabulous job this season. He's done a really, really good job. And he gets Mendoza. You know, like, this is going to be an interesting, pairing between a guy that we all think Mendoza has the goods to be an NFL quarterback. I do think he's a tad too corny. I'm kind of curious, like,
Okay, we talked about this yesterday when we were looking at that mock draft, and I don't know. I've never been in an NFL locker room. I don't know when you're – because, like – and you're the perfect person to talk to. He is – corny's a great way to put it. He is like – he's a Boy Scout. And I don't know if that's important or not to his teammates in the NFL, or if all you care about is how he performs when, you're between the lines. A lot of times you see quarterbacks most successful when they are popular with their teammates, when they're relatable with their teammates, when they have chemistry with all their teammates. Is that something that's important in the NFL?
So here's my thing about the sort of the corniness, right? Like, when you win, it's great. It's like, look at this guy. I've said this to people, like, you're 4-9 as a Raider. You just lost by 17 points to the Broncos. Do you think Max Crosby wants to hear, like, some corny speech you just gave to the media after you lost a game? Right? No. And that's my only concern with Mendoza. Is it real? Is it contrived? Is it to get attention? Like, what's the, what is this? If it is who he is, it's great. But I do think, like, when you win, it sounds great, right? All that stuff. When you start losing, man, people turn on it fast, man. They turn on it fast.
All right, we have a tradition here on the Sean O'Connell Show, the long-standing tradition of assigning experts to cover a particular Olympic sport.
Oh, yes.
Which one do you want? You can't have curling.
We talked about this before, right? Like, I think I was on beach volleyball one year.
Yes.
It was a really tough beat for me.
Yes, but you had to watch it.
I had to watch it. It's a bummer when that happens that way. Okay.
So which winter sport we've given Nordic skiing, so like the cross country you can't have.
Oh, I think I would like curling.
You can't have curling. It's already been claimed.
Oh, jeez, that's the best one.
Well, it's great, but I mean.
Okay, so wait, let me look up Olympic sports. Olympic sports list. Here we go. What can I? Oh, here we go. 2020 Winter Olympics. It starts like soon, right?
It's like tomorrow, I think.
Oh, okay, here we go.
Thursday.
What I can do. I could do some bobsled.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yes, I was hoping you would do bobsled.
Yeah.
I love a good bobsled.
Yeah, I do. I might watch Cool Runnings with the kids again, just to get in the mood for that again. Skeleton is when they go down just like on nothing, right? They basically just go down their bellies.
Yeah. Which one? Yeah. Skeleton is face first and luge is feet first. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, they just want to die.
You're just riding down an ice chute at 100 miles an hour.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. Speaking about that.
Also, they do the team one where they have like one person lays on top of the other person, which is the oddest thing I've ever seen. But yes.
Quickly, the speed skating a couple years ago when I think it was the Chinese lady who like did that. She went. Do you remember that race? She went well ahead of everyone. She like broke the rules of how you win in that sport. Do you remember that?
Yes. That
might have been the greatest thing I've ever seen in any sort of Olympic sport. But I will choose bobsled speaking about skeleton, the other day, it snowed here it snowed 11 inches on Saturday.
Whoa.
Yeah, 11 inches. Yeah, fourth most in Charlotte history. It's
That's
still
amazing.
here. It's starting to piss me off. It's like the snow's still on the ground for the most part. I hate it.
It's 50 degrees in Salt Lake City. We're living in a bizarre world.
It'll be 50. It's going to be 50 tomorrow. So, the first day, Saturday we drove around to some friends' houses and great sledding day. It was absolute sledding, awesome. Sunday was a good day. Monday not as good, right? Because by then it was very light, fluffy snow. It melted pretty fast, And Monday night, Meredith takes 2 blow-up mattresses. She goes, "We're gonna sled down the icy road with the blow-up mattresses." Didn't work very well. R.I.P. mattresses.
Sorry about those mattresses.
It's just like a Meredith thing. What are we? What? Why? What?
Enjoy putting your barbecue pit together on your grass.
Not doing that.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Well,
but
we will be curious to know whether you're not doing it or you will have done it when we talk to you next week.
No, I have kiboshed that. I put my foot down this. It's my house, okay?
Yes, we know how that usually works, Jeff. I'm also a married man.
That doesn't work well, but I will talk to you next Tuesday, sir.
Yes, thanks for your time. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Enjoy San Francisco when you will be suffering through the parties I wish I could get invited to. Congratulations.
Yeah, you're not going to miss much, don't worry.
That's Jeff Schwartz.
Bye, buddy.
He's a curmudgeon. He is like a giant version of Larry David from Curb Your Enthusiasm. All right, blockbuster trade for the Utah Jazz. Sarah Todd is good. Is this real? Sarah's actually going to join us?
We're going to go with that. She just barely said, yes, I can do 1:30, so we're hoping so.
Oh, geez. Well, we better get to it then, because if we're late, then it's our fault. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Blockbuster trade. Let's talk about it for the Utah Jazz with the Utah Jazz insider from the Des News, Sarah Todd, who's kind enough to jump on and react to the big news that Jaren Jackson Jr. will be headed to Salt Lake City, along with several other players, and the Utah Jazz are sending out Walter Clayton Jr., Kyle Anderson, Taylor Hendricks, George Niang, and 3 future first-round picks. Sarah, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am not doing too bad. I'm coming at you live from the parking lot of a McDonald's where I'm using McDonald's Wi-Fi to write my story, and I'm watching somebody get arrested right now. So there's just a lot going on in my life.
That's incredible. Oh, the cinema and the glamour of being a beat writer. Wow. Thank you for giving us a little look at what that actually is. Your initial reaction to this big trade?
Yeah, my initial reaction is surprise. I didn't expect them to do something big. I don't know that, if you'd asked them, I mean, I have asked them, right? Like a few weeks ago, I don't think that there were a lot of people within the Jazz organization that really expected for them to do something major and big. But, the making Ja Morant available, and this was kind of signaled, right, when the Grizzlies traded Desmond Bane. The Ja Morant thing has been percolating for a while, and him being very clearly available for trade, all that does is send signals out to the rest of the league to say everything else is available too, right? And so I think it's really great from the Jazz to have gone in and instead of going for maybe what would seem like the flashier thing to do and go after someone like Ja Morant, they got Memphis' kind of more consistent player from the last 4 years. And just as far as you're looking at that lineup, I mean, I know that's probably something that we're going to talk about too, is the idea of Walker Kessler, Lowry Markkanen, and Jaren Jackson Jr. all playing together. Like, it's a bit wild, but I think that it's really intriguing.
Well, with this move, have the Jazz in the front office announced it, like, all right, this rebuild is not going to be called that anymore. Now we're tuning, and this is a team that in 2026, 2027, we're going to actually put our foot down to the gas pedal, and we're going to try to compete and win some games.
Yeah, I think that there's been a lot of fatigue, right, from Ryan Smith and anybody else in the organization. I don't think that anybody really enjoys the years of tanking, right? But that's kind of what they've been saying over the last couple of years about how to frame what a rebuilding process is. People within the Jazz organization have liked to say that in order to do a rebuild, you have to tear down to then build back up. And so we've been seeing a lot of the tear down over the last couple of years, and this is kind of, the first big step of building things back up. So like you're saying, like, this is going to be fine-tuning. I want to temper expectations for everyone. I don't want everyone to think like next year they're going to be world beaters, right? But this is a really good sign for the Jazz to be ready to actually compete and try to make things happen as early as next season.
It doesn't feel coincidental that you're bringing a guy, a former defensive player of the year, multiple-time All-NBA defensive team, when your team has been pretty bad defensively, and they've talked about several times, even in recent weeks, how that needs to be fixed. How much can a player like Triple J fix that?
Yeah, and we don't know what the future of the other players coming over, right? Like John Concher, Jock Landale, Vince Williams Jr. We don't know how that's all going to shake out for the future of the Jazz, right? But my greater point here is that those Memphis teams, even under the new regime, dating back to the grit and grind days of the Memphis Grizzlies, like, there has been a very, very strong and important defensive culture for that team. And so, like, that is the kind of player in Jaren Jackson that you're bringing in. And even if you end up keeping any of these other players, they've been in that system, like, that is the number one priority for them. And when you're talking talking about Triple J, I think it's important to note like his success on being a point of attack defender as well as being a front court defender. And so obviously you're going to want some smaller players, whether it's your Keontae George, Ace Bailey, to step up as perimeter and point of attack defenders in the long term, or add more wing and point of attack defenders as the years go on. But this is a huge injection for them to increase their defensive efficiency right off the bat.
How much has the emergence of Keontae George affected, a decision to make a move like this? I don't want to oversell anything, but it feels like if Keontae was struggling along this year, we might be asked, hey, be patient. We'll see what happens with this draft, whatever. Has his emergence accelerated the timeline to trigger something like the move we're seeing today?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it in two ways, too, and not just that it's accelerated things, but also that, if Keontae was struggling across the league, and especially from Jazz fans, we'd be having a much different view of how the Jazz have actually handled the draft and these selections of the last couple of years, right? Like, we've seen some good stuff from Cody Williams over the last few weeks, but a few weeks is not something to hang your hat on, and so the jury is still out. Taylor Hendricks, who has now been sent out in this trade, like, that was looking like it was, I mean, he was basically out of the rotation, and, whether or not the season-ending injury from last year had to do a lot with it or not, like, he was struggling. And so, like, we have a lot of, top 10 picks, lottery picks that we're looking at that are not really looking like they're going to pan out into great players. And so then you place a lot of hope and responsibility on the shoulders of guys like Ace Bailey and Keontae George. So if we were looking at Keontae George struggling through this year, that would have been a huge black mark for the Jazz in their drafting during the rebuild. But also, I mean, they'd probably be fencing him out in a trade like this and trying to get something back, and maybe not even get something as valuable. Because prior to this season, Keontae's value was really low. But he has completely turned things around with his play, with his attitude, with his approach. And so, absolutely, when you have a player like that that's starting to emerge, add a 26-year-old huge defensive player in Triple J, that does speed up the timeline.
Sarah Todd for another minute or two here, Utah Jazz Insider over at the Des News. The three picks are a 2027 first-rounder from the Cleveland-Minnesota deal, the Lakers 2027 first-round pick, and a 2031 first-round pick. That's what Memphis gets as part of the draft capital return from trading Jaren Jackson to the Jazz. What do you think of that? This is a team that has been rich in draft capital, and I don't know that people wanted to be patient enough to see how a 2031 first-round pick was going to work out anyway, but you're giving up 2 first-round picks in 2027. Is this going to be something that the Jazz look back on and say, yeah, made sense, or are we going to regret it?
Yeah, that's the big question every time that there's multiple draft picks that are sent out in a trade, right? Like, is hindsight going to make this look bad? I think definitely the thinking here is that the 2027 draft right now projects to be not a super highly touted draft class, and because you're hoping that the Jazz are going to be at least competing in the Western Conference, and you probably expect for Cleveland and Minnesota to at least be good for the next couple of years. So that first pick that's the most favorable of those 3 teams, that's probably not going to be a very high pick, so you're not too worried about sending that one out. The Lakers are probably going to be in the mix, like you wouldn't expect for a Luka Doncic team in 2 years to be down at the bottom of the standings in a way that's going to give a really, really high pick. So I'd say not too worried about the 2027 pick, like I said, especially considering what that draft class kind of looks like right now. The 2031 pick, that's probably the one that looks good, but I've been saying it for years now. The Jazz were not collecting all these picks to make the picks themselves in perpetuity. You know, like they weren't just going to keep making draft picks. At some point, you do have to start packaging these together to actually kind of make a go for it. And they still have assets in the cupboard to continue to make deals. I think that the Phoenix 2031 pick is probably the pick that Memphis is the most excited to receive in this, because they're looking down the barrel of a rebuild now. And so that one you might, 5 years from now look back on and think, oh, we could have had that. But I don't think that anybody in the Jazz world wants to be sitting here 5 years from now wondering what they could have got at the top of the draft. They'd rather be competing 5 years from now.
Does the acquisition of Jaren Jackson Jr., does it change the math on Walker Kessler's impending free agency, restricted or not?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things at play here, right? Like from Walker's side of things, right? Like Walker's view of things, I think that there was maybe a little bit of concern that the Jazz might be heading towards not being a competing team, and that could be worrying if you're in Walker Kessler's camp, right? And so if you look at the idea of playing beside kind of another stretch guy like Jaren Jackson Jr. who can shoot from the outside, you're still going to be able to play on the court with him. Like, that probably feels exciting to actually be starting to build up. And so maybe that softens feelings there a little bit. From the Jazz side of things, I think, they've been open and are open to keeping Walker Kessler around. I don't think that this necessarily changes the number that they would probably end on. I think that's all more tied to Walker's surgery and what his recovery might look like, and kind of just what the two sides are going to be willing for many years to come.
I will, for now, share in that excitement, and what a fun thing to happen 2 days before trade deadline. Sarah, thanks for your insight and your time. I appreciate you.
No problem. Thanks a lot, OC.
Sarah Todd from the Des News, Utah Jazz Insider. I have Black Crows tickets to give away next with a trivia question, and we'll talk with Spence Checketts. He's going to have some thoughts on the Jazz making this big deal to bring in Jaren Jackson Jr. Sean O'Connell Show wrapping up next with some crosstalk brought to you by Advanced Window Products, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. The Utah Jazz blockbuster trade today brings in Jaren Jackson Jr. He was the NBA Defensive Player of the Year in which NBA season? 877-353-0700. 2 tickets to the Black Crows if you know the answer to that question. Jaren Jackson Jr. coming to the Utah Jazz as part of a big-time trade where the Jazz will give up 3 future first-round draft picks, several players, maybe a couple that you care about, but most likely not. Black Crows at Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater on August 13th. Crosstalk is brought to you by Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100 for $2,500 off 10 windows or more. We don't have real winter, so you haven't suffered through the heating bills that you normally would, but guess what? Summer's coming, and you need an energy-efficient home for that as well. 801-850-9100, advancedwindows.com. The Drive and Spence Checketts are up next. Spence, I know, has some thoughts on this trade. How are you?
I'm well. This is potentially the biggest trade in the history of the Utah Jazz.
Whoa!
I mean, go down the list. This is potentially the biggest swing the Jazz have ever taken as an organization, with the potential exception of Jeff Hornacek back in the 90s to pair him with John and Carl.
Okay.
So
all right.
My gut tells me there's more, and reaching out to try to see what I can find out there. Because, look, we need to alleviate some concerns. Jaren Jackson Jr. is about to find out that he has tendonitis of the back or something.
Correct.
He's about to find out that he has a bad knee. He doesn't know that he has a bad knee. He's about to find out that he has a bad knee.
He is going to come to Salt Lake City and have a lot of time to get the lay of the land without playing meaningful basketball.
That is correct. So the panic about the panic about holding on to this year's draft asset, do away with it, okay? Because they kept the pick this year, indicating they want to keep the pick this year, so therefore they will do whatever they need to do to keep the pick this year. What makes this thing potentially over the top exciting is if you land one of the top 3 picks, because what the roster doesn't have right now is a ton of ball in hand decision-making offensive players. But this is a team that for 4 years has been historically pathetic on defense, and they just added one of the best defensive players on the market. Now, I'm hearing a lot of, can he play next to Walker? Have you looked up Jaren Jackson Jr.'s stats? I would imagine you look up a lot of things on the show. Have you looked up his stats?
I actually haven't.
Okay. Type in Jaren Jackson Jr. stats right now, because the Jazz actually need a center like Walker Kessler to pair next to a forward like Jaren Jackson Jr. Now, look up his rebounds per game.
He is at just under 6.
He doesn't rebound the basketball. Like, I think a lot of people just assume, like, Jaren Jackson Jr., big dude, good defensive player, man, he must crash the glass. He doesn't. He's never rebounded it well, which has kind of been an oddity. Now, he's a positional defensive player that can switch 1 through 5. There are probably 10 of those in the league. He shoots at about 38% from 3, which a lot of people don't realize that as well. So this is not like, oh, it's redundant with Walker because he's a rim protector and a rebounder. He actually is not. He's a guy that can guard on the perimeter, and he can, guard in the paint a little bit. You need a rim protector like a Walker Kessler or a Yusuf Nurkic, who's played well this year, next to Jaren Jackson Jr. You slide Lowry to 3, and where it gets interesting is my guess is the coaching staff in the front office have done their calculation, and they think Ace can play 2. Ace Bailey is your starting 2. What does that mean at the 1? What does that mean for a true classic point guard? Or, as Will Hardy himself has talked a lot about, just give me 5 skilled players on the floor. Doesn't matter who brings the ball up and initiates the offense. Do you trust Keontae to do that? That's a tricky thing, because what Keontae has shown is he's a great individual offensive player. His decision-making is better this year, but is it good enough to be like a offense initiator with 4 really big, long players around you? And that's the other thing. Keontae is a sieve on defense. But what you have now are 4 dudes between 6'9" and 7'2" behind him that can protect the paint and guard in the case that Keontae loses a man, which he always does.
I love the move because it does a couple of things. It stops the narrative about, well, we're kicking this can down the road, this rebuild, trust us. We're going to do this for another year or 2 or 3 or however long, and it's at least an attempt. It does address the defensive issues, like you said, at least at that one position, and you do it without it being excessively expensive in a meaningful way. Now, having draft capital is wonderful, but one of these picks is in 2031.
It's the Suns' unprotected pick. But still, it is 2031 when I'm in my mid-50s, so I'm not worried about it.
There's not a single person watching Jazz basketball right now who's just like, I can't wait to see what that pick 5 years from now is going to translate to.
Exactly, and coaches and GMs don't cheer for future draft capital either.
Which 13-year-old kid are we watching today to see how he translates to be that pick? So it's a admission that, hey, we realize you're not going to do this with us forever. Fan base, support base, whatever. It's time to win. We can't ask our players and Will Hardy to keep like, hey, we want you to suck in a classy way. They're like, let's try this.
Yeah.
And it's going to start 2026, 2027.
Yeah, a couple other things. So as you referenced, one of the picks is Phoenix's pick in 2031. Now it is completely unprotected, so that's a wild card. But to your point, nobody cheers for draft picks. And most front office executives and coaches don't either because they usually don't have the job by the time the pick comes around. The other two picks are the most favorable of the 2027 first-round pick between Cleveland, Minnesota, and Utah. Now, that gets a little hairy, and here's why. I think Cleveland's done their calculation, and I think they're going to try to start over. It sounds like Donovan's going to leave. Where have we heard this story before? If they trade Garland to the Clippers for Harden, what that does is Harden's money comes off the books next year. They get out from underneath Garland's contract, and Donovan leaves, so they start over next year. And that draft pick could be a valuable one that goes to Memphis.
In a relatively lackluster draft from how it's being projected right now.
And that's where I was going to land because the other one is the Lakers' 2027 first-round pick. So Austin's very smart, and he has always believed in drafting, developing, and retaining. He's all about the draft. He's all about college players. So what he's done here is made sure that two of the picks are in the 2027 class, which isn't expected to be anything like the class this year or the class in 2028, where the Jazz, I think, at least have two, maybe three picks still in their back pocket. So this is a really, really good trade, in my opinion. Now, it's predicated on some things falling into place. We will all be sitting around our television during the lottery, and if the Jazz grab one of the top two picks, and if they compare either Darren Peterson and A.J. DeBonsa with Ace Bailey, Keontae George, Jaren Jackson Jr., Lauri Markkanen, and Walker Kessler, we're cooking with gas next year. I mean, we're not winning championships, but that's a playoff team and maybe a top 5 or 6 team in the West.
What if you get pick number 5 again?
Still in a better spot than you have been.
I mean, it's 1 through 8 is supposed to be pretty good.
It's a good trade.
I like the trade, and even if I think it's going to work out better in this year's draft lottery for Utah, just because I am a believer in the manipulation schemes. You wouldn't be able to convince me otherwise.
Wait, wouldn't that mean it's not going to work out for the Jazz because it never has been?
No. I think that the Utah Jazz and the A.J. DeBonsa thing are going to come together.
Oh, okay. So you think behind the scenes this has all been plotted out? Get A.J. to BYU. He sees Utah, loves Utah. My guy Rye, a couple of guys in their 40s wearing their hats backwards.
Yeah.
He gets to know Rye.
We can't give you Cooper Flag this year.
Okay.
Because we made this deal with Dallas and LA.
Yeah.
But I'll make good on it on the back end, and you will get your BYU guy, your local guy. You'll get what you want here.
I see.
I'm a believer.
Yeah. And Bill Gates created the vaccine. Let's just get it over with. I mean, we all know that. To co-opt our thoughts and steal our data. I mean, right?
Which one?
Well, we're in the space.
Which one?
Seriously, look, I hope you're correct. Because if the Jazz, I can't believe I just said that on the radio. If it's a Joe Rogan podcast all of a sudden. If the Jazz get one of the top 2 picks in the draft, I mean, look, without this trade, if they get one of those 2 kids, boom, we're going. If you can pair one of those two, and look, I know a lot of people like Cam Boozer. Cam Boozer would not fit in with this roster the way that Darren would or AJ would. I mean, in that scenario, you actually have a roster that is very similar to a roster that resides in Oklahoma City who just won a championship a year ago. They've got 7 or 8 dudes between 6'6" and 7'2", and they all can dribble, pass, and shoot. They all can make plays. They're switchable on defense. I mean, that's what this front office is looking at right now. And as of the trade today, they're a lot closer than they have been for the past 4 years.
You heard it here first. Spence Checketts says that the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade makes the Utah Jazz into the Thunder, and a championship is coming to Salt Lake City.
No, let me build on that. Several, like 6 or 7 rings. I mean, this is the start of a dynasty in Salt Lake. In
not
fact,
one, not two.
Oh, that's still the
not
most
three.
the cringiest video of all time. Let me bottom line this. If they don't win at least 5 championships, Ryan Smith should sell the Jazz.
Okay. Wow.
You started it. It's a good trade. It just is. If you're
I
a
love
Jazz
it.
fan, you should be happy.
I wasn't expecting it, and it's a very pleasant surprise.
Absolutely.
I am very curious to know what Jaren Jackson Jr. thinks of Salt Lake City, Utah.
Well, the
because
good news is he's lived in Memphis for the past 6-7 years. That place is a hole.
Salt Lake is way cooler than Memphis.
Memphis
way
sucks.
nicer than Memphis. But Memphis is at one end of a cultural spectrum
All
that
right,
Salt Lake is at the opposite end of.
Oh, Tongans.
It's been
Okay, yeah.
It's been a big part of the narrative against Utah's success in the NBA. And I don't know if this applies to Jaren Jackson Jr. or not.
Yeah.
But if you love living in Memphis, you might not love living in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
But
Well,
that's
I mean,
just for I'm not trying to create negativity around the trade. I think it's an awesome one. It is a curious talking point for me.
so, I mean, he's under contract for 5 years. So if he doesn't like it here, if he wants to show up and get paid, he's going to have to play basketball in Salt Lake City for at least 4 years. The 5th year is a player option. Look, that's always the concern, and we're always stung by this because breaking news, it's not just folks from one one race or one belief system. We couldn't keep the white guy who likes to play video games at night. He went to Boston. All right, so it's not like just African Americans don't like Salt Lake. The whitest dude in the NBA who spends his night streaming video games was like, I don't like Salt Lake. So, you never know. Gordon Hayward, for anyone who's confused.
Talking about Gordon Hayward and his stupid haircut.
Just
by
one,
the way.
someone's like, Adam Keefe like video games? What's going on?
Andre Kirilenko did like it here, Spence. I don't know what he's a renowned gamer. Stay tuned for The Drive. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. We'll do it again tomorrow on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.